Welcome to r/entitled parents, where Karen takes out a $50,000 loan in OP's name. My mother took out a $50,000 loan in my name without my knowledge. My mother has always been very bad with money, but she's a very good liar. When I was in my teens, my dad got really sick and he couldn't work. That left my mother in charge of the finances. I'm an only child, so we never really struggled for money. But when my dad got sick, we went from being upper middle class to lower middle class very quickly. My dad's medical treatments were insanely expensive. Suddenly, our electricity would be shut off randomly. I never knew if the water would be cut off or if the internet and phones would be disconnected. We would get notices on the door of our home constantly. All of this made me nervous because I didn't understand what was happening. Every time I asked my mother what was going on, she would tell me that everything was fine and that it must have been a mistake by the utility company. I trusted her, so I thought it was normal. When I was 17, I decided I wanted to go to college. When I asked my mom about it, she told me that she was excited and that she and my dad had a college fund saved up that would pay for it. She said they were going to take care of everything. What that actually meant was taking out a $50,000 loan in my name when I was 17. I had no idea my mom did that, and I have no idea how she did it without my knowledge. I'm assuming that she forged my signature at some point. So I went to college without ever knowing it was costing me money. I was in my second semester of freshman year when I realized something was wrong with my mother. I got a call from MasterCard saying I had missed my monthly payments for several months. The problem was I didn't have a MasterCard. I didn't have any credit cards at all, to my knowledge. When I called my mom, crying and telling her that my identity had been stolen, she calmly said that she had some credit cards in my name. Because she acted like that was a perfectly reasonable thing for a parent to do, I believed it. I trusted my mom. She told me she would take care of everything, but I would still get collections calls that I had to beg her to handle. I struggled financially through all 4 years of college. At one point, she stopped paying for my college housing, so on top of going to school and working, I was constantly worried about being evicted. It was around the time I graduated that I realized my mother had taken out a huge student loan in my name. By then, I was stuck with a degree that was never going to get me a job that would allow me to pay off a loan that big. At one point in my 20s, I had to move back in with my parents because my job wasn't covering my rent and student loan payments. During that 6-month period, my mom was served with court papers 3 different times. I would go to the door and someone from the court would ask for my mother and then hand her papers saying, "You've been served." Every time it happened, she wouldn't tell me what it was about and would just say, "It was a mistake." My dad eventually got better and he was able to work again. He now has a really good paying job, but they have a lot of medical debt and whatever other debt my mom has gotten herself into. I'm in my 30s now, and I monitor my credit closely, mostly because I worry about my mother committing identity theft. I have clear boundaries with her, but she still lies, and she has never apologized for putting me in the financial position that I'm in now. I do love her because I know she was just struggling to keep our family afloat, but she should have been honest about how poor we actually were. She should not have let me go to college thinking it was financially sound decision. And she should never have used me and my credit like a bank. Now I never know who to trust or what's real. Is reality what I know it is, or is reality what my mom says it is? My dad is trying to force my uncontrollable stepsister on my trip, and I told him I would never forgive him. I, 17 female, am graduating, and my friends and I have already planned a trip to a cabin for this summer before we start college. I've been babysitting since I was 13, so I've saved up a considerable amount of money. When I was 15, my dad got remarried about 1.5 years after my mom passed. My dad's wife had a 13-year-old daughter, and as soon as we moved in together, they started pushing her off on me and forcing us to do everything together. I don't like my stepsister. She's always throwing tantrums if she doesn't get what she wants. She's so spoiled that at my 16th birthday, she got her own special cake so she wouldn't feel left out, and she also blew out the candles on my cake. When I complained, my dad told me, "It's time to grow up. Being a sister is about sharing things." I told him I didn't have a sister, and I guess she overheard, which led to a rampage that ruined the party. I distanced myself more from them after that. I'm often forced to either take her with me to places or stay home with her if I can't take her or if my dad and wife can't watch her or don't want to deal with her. I was forced to take her bowling, where she kept trying to dig her hands into the part where the balls come out of, and even tried running down the lane. I had to take her home, ruining my night. This happens a lot, but they just don't care. I tried to keep this trip a secret from her, but when I was in my room on the phone talking about it over pizza and music, I found out that she snuck in and hid in the closet to eavesdrop. She burst out asking if she could come along, and I told her no and to get out. She started stomping her feet and ran off. My friends begged me not to invite her. My dad called me downstairs and asked if she could go because she could use a vacation. I told him I'm not taking her. They can take her on a vacation, but I'm not watching her alone for almost 3 weeks. My dad's wife called me selfish and said that since my dad was paying for a portion of it, if Lily doesn't go, then I don't get to go. I told her she doesn't have a say in this. She's not my mom, and she should stop forcing her kid on me when she created the situation. Lily started yelling at me about not being a good big sister and not wanting to spend time with her. I snapped and told her I didn't want to. She ran away crying, and my dad said he won't pay for the rest of the trip if I don't take her. I told him if he did that, I would not talk to him anymore, nor would I forgive him. He said I'm being dramatic and that she isn't that bad. So I grabbed a bag and went to my aunt's house, my mom's sister, and I told her what happened. She said she would cover what he took away and that when I go to college, I can stay with her. I told my dad what I was doing and he blew up at me, saying I was being a brat and that they're my family now, not my aunt. As far as I know, Lily doesn't have any disabilities. She's been to doctors and to therapy. She's just extremely spoiled and acts this way to get her way. She knows she has to cry and stomp around to get what she wants. Your aunt is acting more like family than your dad. I agree. See if you can live with your aunt from now on. Are you dependent on your dad for college? OP. I'm not. My mom left me money for 2 years. I decided to do an RN program and then go back once I work and save up more money. I feel like you should have set some better boundaries instead of just giving up. You need to lay it out for him. Do you really think that she's good for your life if she keeps you away from your daughter? Are you really a man and a father if you let a woman dictate what you can and can't do? I would tell him straight up that you don't have the luxury of giving up because you made me. I would appreciate it if you'd get a backbone and start acting like it. OP. That's fair and I respect your opinion, but it's not my job to try and fix anything or set boundaries anymore. We did have a talk about it in therapy, and he still tried to integrate them into the sessions when I have expressed hundreds of times that I do not want that, so I'm done trying. I'm the kid in this situation. Update 6 months later. The trip happened, and I did not end up taking her, as I said I wouldn't. From the time I posted until the time I left, the household was very tense and awkward. I wasn't speaking to any of them. The only person I had to confide in was my aunt, so I'm grateful for her. My dad still thought I should bring Lily on the trip. I kept telling him that I was not watching her and she was not coming with me. On the morning of the trip, we left around 6 in the morning, and when he called me, I was already about 5 hours out, so he couldn't do anything. When I got back, there was a lot of yelling and crying from me, my dad, and his wife. She said I left them in a tough position and they had to stay home because they couldn't get anyone to watch Lily. My dad and I had a serious talk for hours, and he agreed that maybe we need to separate to work on our relationship, which hurt me because I would have liked for him to tell me I could stay in my own home while we did that. But I did end up going to my aunt's house with no issues. My dad and I started family therapy with just the two of us. His wife was pretty upset he was actually listening to me and seeing where I was coming from. Right when we were getting good and building a better relationship, I came over for dinner, and he asked if we could integrate his wife and Lily into therapy. I told him I had no interest in having a relationship with them. She called me a selfish jerk and said I needed to be grateful she let me stay with them after she moved in. I waited for my dad to correct her, but he was silent, so I left and I haven't talked to him in almost a month. He keeps showing me that he will not be on my side. So to wrap things up, the cabin trip was fun. I've never felt so free from a burden. The trip was in June and we were there for about a month. We even extended it. When I was packing for school, my dad came to visit, and I guess his wife called, so he had to lie about where he was because she doesn't want him to see me. I told him we don't need to have contact right now or continue therapy because it's clear which part of his family he cares more about. I don't know what's going to become of my dad, and right now I don't care. I'm focused on school and studying to become a nurse. I don't want any negativity to ruin this experience, but I'd be lying if I said it doesn't hurt that I don't have a parent to experience this with. My aunt says that she is my surrogate mom and to share all of my worries and successes with her. I'm currently in my first week of college, and the amount of freedom I feel here is also new. I'm a little overwhelmed, but I'm in an honors club, a creative writing and book club, and the friends that I've made are amazing. I'm currently living on campus and have never been better mentally. I'm getting separate therapy to deal with my mom's passing because that was never offered to me by my dad. My aunt has truly become a mother figure to me. Being 2 states away from her is really hard, but I can't wait for weekend visits and holiday visits. Also, another thing is that I'm going to become a godmother. My aunt was told at 22 that she would never be able to have kids, and she's currently 4 months pregnant. I'm so excited because if anybody is going to be a good mother, I know it's going to be her. When she came to visit and tell me, I think she saw that I was a little worried. I told her I'm so excited and happy for her and nothing will change that, but she's the only family I have right now, and I don't want to get left behind like I did at home. We cried, and she promised me that she was filling in for my mom and would be there for the rest of my life, whether I wanted her or not. This dad is useless and pathetic. Doesn't even jump to defend OP when that wife of his insulted her. He deserves to be lonely and miserable for the rest of his life. It's outrageous that the new wife suggested she should be grateful for letting her stay, and the father says nothing. That's a complete betrayal of his daughter. But there's a kind of justice in that the stepsister is going to make them suffer big time when her entitlement hits reality. Am I the jerk for refusing to name my baby after my husband's late friend? I'm 25 female, and my husband, who's 27, have a complicated history, especially considering his family. I met him on a blind date when we were both in college, and he asked me to be his girlfriend on our second date. He's always been sweet and tries to be considerate of my feelings, especially when it comes to his family. His mother has always been against our relationship from the start, mostly due to reasons that make me wonder if I might be the jerk here. He had a friend, let's call her Annie, who passed when he was a teenager. They were very close, and he always insisted they were platonic. However, his mother constantly talks about how they were supposed to get married as adults and that I'm his second choice, saying he wouldn't have married me if Annie were still alive. It's always hurt, to be honest, but I've tried to be as accommodating as possible, knowing how much his mother cared about Annie and that she was friends with Annie's mother. Annie was a great girl, and I wish I could have gotten to know her, but it stings being constantly compared to the woman my husband could have been with, especially since we already have a son whom his mother refuses to acknowledge as her real grandbaby because he isn't Annie's. Now, this is where I think I might have overreacted and I could be the jerk. 2 months ago, we found out we were having a baby girl, and we were ecstatic. I was worried my husband might be one of those boy-only fathers, but he almost cried when he learned we were having a girl. Our son is over the moon, constantly talking to his sister and asking about her name, which has become an issue. He recently asked if we could name our daughter after Annie. This was really upsetting to me, especially since his mother is still so fixated on the idea of them being together. We ended up arguing about it, and now I'm currently staying with my son at a friend's house. Am I overthinking this? I just don't know what to do. His mom has been blowing up my messages. I don't even know how she got my number. We haven't spoken to her since our son's first birthday, and my own mom is telling me to stop arguing about it and just let him choose the name since this is his only daughter. Any advice is appreciated. I really need a non-biased opinion. My friends think I overreacted by leaving, but I just needed some time for myself, and I'm not ready to confront him right now. I know I can be sensitive without realizing it, so any input would be helpful. Edit. Annie passed when they were 18, and yes, my husband and Annie's mother were friends. My husband and I met when I had just started college, and we got married a year later. Our son is 3. My husband always defends me and stands up to his mother when it comes down to it. I know he cares about me, but I sometimes worry if he'll subconsciously start believing what she says. I know I'm his wife, the woman he married and has kids with, but it's hard not to feel secondary sometimes. My husband works a lot, and at the moment, I wasn't thinking clearly. But looking back, I feel like it was a good choice to take our son with me. I don't want him to be left alone. I won't argue if my husband wants to see our son or pick him up when he's free, but I'm just not ready to speak to him right now. Regarding compromise, after reading through some comments, I think using any name similar to Anne might be an issue. While I understand the sentiment is sweet, I don't want to feel pressured into choosing a name I know I'll regret. Not the jerk. Wanting to name your kid with a name that has caused so many issues in your relationship is unfair to you. Due to his mother's behavior, his friend's name is now off the card. Your daughter will also be favored over your son because she is the memorial to Annie. This name is now toxic to your marriage, and the fact that he let it get to this point where you had to leave your home whilst pregnant is not right. You can get by it, but he needs to understand that he could damage your relationship between you and your daughter before she's born, cause resentment with her brother because she is a favorite, and cause issues for you every time her name is mentioned. Good luck. How do I tell my family I won't let my 18-year-old nephew move in with me? For some context, my older brother is several years older than me. When we were kids, our mother was one of those flighty hippie types who was raised rich but spent all her inheritance, then got cut off by her wealthy grandparents. She never learned to manage her money. Every couple of months, my mother would come up with some crazy idea like moving to Thailand to raise orangutans or moving to Dubai and marrying a rich guy. We moved around a lot as kids. She dabbed with minor cults, but thankfully nothing too serious. I think she just has issues and is trying to cope and is desperate for attention no matter the type. Anyway, this is only relevant because I wanted to explain. My brother and I have always been close. In many ways, he was my only stability growing up, and there was definitely a lot of codependency there, and some resentment too. My mother is what people would call a boy mom, always making excuses for him, which didn't do him any favors. When he was in high school, he dated a girl who got him hooked on bad things. He was talented and very popular, but after that, he got expelled, lost his prestigious apprenticeship, and fell into a spiral. He got a girl pregnant. At the time, I believed my mother when she said it was all the girlfriend's fault for trying to baby trap him. It was definitely not all her fault. They were only teenagers and being foolish. Fast forward a few years, I'm just about to start my final year of high school, and my brother is at rock bottom. His most recent girlfriend left him. He asks our mother and me to take in his 4-year-old son. Given what our mother was like, this means he was really asking me to raise him, and I did. My mother thankfully let him sleep in her room at night, but during the day, he was my responsibility. I dropped him off at daycare before school, often being late, but my teachers were incredibly tolerant. I honestly have no idea how I graduated at all. I didn't turn up some days until lunch, and some days not at all. I only had a small group of really close friends who were understanding. I'd pick up my nephew after school, and we'd all hang out together with the toddler. My peers just ignored all this, which honestly was probably for the best. There were a couple of weird looks because my nephew looked a lot like my ex, but I was so focused on my friends and my nephew that if there was any bullying, I didn't notice it. I was stressed out but happy. I didn't even go to my graduation dinner because I couldn't find anyone to take care of the baby as my mother was out of town with her boyfriend. At the time, my brother was trying to get his life back together and seeing his son only on weekends. My nephew used to regularly call me his mom. I always tried to correct him, but he did it so frequently that I don't think he understood I was only his aunt. From the ages of 4 to almost 7, I raised him. I did my university degree, had a full-time job, and cared for my nephew. In some ways, this time was the happiest I've ever been, but it was also difficult. Seeing how my brother's life was destroyed, I decided I wasn't ever going to have kids of my own and would never date anyone who was addicted to something. When my nephew was almost 7, my brother decided to take him back. He had a new girlfriend who wanted to play happy families, basically not work and just look after the kid on my brother's dime. I was gutted, but kind of relieved. I was 20 and wanted to have fun with my friends. Most of them had already left our old hometown by then, and I was getting pretty lonely with only 1 or 2 friends left. It was hard. At first, it was good having my quiet existence back, having time to myself, but I missed the baby a lot, and seeing my brother every weekend too. Now, the most I'd see them is if my brother needed a babysitter, which wasn't very frequently. Fast forward a couple of years, my brother's girlfriend found a new sugar daddy and left him. He's devastated, which is puzzling since he was cheating on her. By this point, our relationship was pretty strained. He had stopped trying to get clean and couldn't keep a stable job. He asked me to take in my nephew again. I wasn't sure how long it would be, but I was willing. I noticed before, but it was now obvious how messed up my nephew was. He didn't seem to understand that his ex wasn't his biological mother, was very naughty and spoiled. I tried to be understanding and give him stability, but he only ever wanted his dad. He would cry, act out, and destroy things. It was hard, and I was heartbroken because I couldn't understand where my sweet boy had gone. Trying to support my brother at the same time when my nephew was with his grandmother was exhausting. When the cheating girlfriend came back, my nephew was picked up, and it all went back to how it was. I was left alone, feeling like I was just waiting for my brother and nephew to call, stuck with an emotionally manipulative mother who would do or say anything for attention. I decided to move states not long after that. I spoke to my brother maybe a couple of times a year, and my nephew only on birthdays or Christmas. He didn't remember me after a few years. My brother, who seems to have a very reduced ability to feel emotions, says a few concerning things throughout the years about my nephew. Like his hot temper got him suspended. He constantly steals and lies. He never took him to therapy when I suggested it and didn't seem to think it was an issue. My nephew is now 18 and he messages me out of the blue saying he misses me. He wants me to help him pay to move states and come live with me. I'm in my early 30s, have a retail business and a 1-bedroom apartment and a cat. I work 10 hours a day, have no friends close by, and haven't dated anyone since my late 20s. I've recently started thinking about dating again if I want to find a partner sometime this century. I've hardly spoken to my nephew in years, and I highly doubt he remembers me at all. I haven't even visited since I moved away. My brother and mother think I should let him move in, but I don't want to give up my quiet life again. Honestly, I'm just tired of cleaning up after them and want to be left alone. How do I tell them? Update. Be assured I'm definitely not taking my nephew in. I will tell him no, but I'll be clear that I'm only a phone call away if he wants someone to talk to. A comment suggested my family might want me to take my brother's new baby in given there's some tension there. And I was in a bit of a panic trying to figure out how I would even look after a baby with my current schedule before I snapped out of it. I like kids, but no, I don't want to raise this one only for them to be taken away again. If they insist, I'll ask they test paternity, which will create its own chaos, but it's better to know. I mentioned in a comment I'm not sure if my eldest nephew is my brother's, as he looks nothing like anyone on our side of the family. By the time the biological mother left, we were all attached to the baby, so I don't think it matters. I think it would break my brother and my nephew if it was negative though. Update 2. You were right. When I stated I don't have the space for him here, my brother said I should move back home so the boys aren't separated and my youngest nephew doesn't grow up not knowing his older brother. He's been insisting for years that I should come home for Christmas and birthdays, but I work every day but Sundays and Christmas, so I haven't been back home since I moved states. I'm so confused. It's like he's using my nephew as a lure. You've done more than enough setting yourself on fire to keep these people warm. You owe it to yourself to live your best life, which does not include continuing to be their life crutch. I wish you all the best. Am I the jerk for telling my husband no, he can't go climbing and has to help with home renovations first? I'm 36 female. My husband, who's 38, and I decided to renovate the bathroom because there was water damage from a leaking toilet. It was mostly my idea to renovate, but not just for aesthetics. Mold was growing at the bottom of the vanity, sheetrock, etc. He agreed to renovate, but he had very little interest in the process. He has untreated ADHD and doesn't enjoy home maintenance. Not speculation, he tells me this. That being said, it became my job to apply for loans, search for contractors, schedule them to come, etc. It's a lot of mental work and I did it alone. He agreed to save money and offered to demo the bathroom himself. I was hesitant at first because he's not usually motivated to do things around the house, and with his ADHD, his timeline and processing speed are very slow, so things often don't get done. He promised me many times he wanted to do it. I sent screenshots of the calendar and told him the days that he would start. The whole week leading up to demo day, I mentally prepared him. We've been together for 21 years, so I know how he is. He'll say he forgot, or it'll seem like brand new information to him, so every day he got a reminder. Fast forward to last night, the night before demo was supposed to start. He sends me a message asking if he can go climbing with his friends. I said I'd prefer he just demo like we agreed. He only has 2 days off, so I said no. Sorry, you can't go. This turned into an hour-long argument about how the weather wouldn't be good the rest of the week and how he could just do it the next day. But I know him. He waits until the last minute and something may go wrong. We might need to call for extra help or something else could come up. I always have a sense of urgency and he has none, which makes my life very difficult. To add, he has a job where he often gets to do his hobbies. He climbs with his work friends, goes hiking, skiing, etc. On his days off, he goes for bike rides for hours. He's absolutely not deprived of leisure time, but I am. I've been home all summer. I'm a teacher, being responsible for the kids 90% of the time. I've been up with them in the morning, taking them out for activities all day, and putting them to bed at night. On top of that, I've cleaned up after the kids and his messes every single day. I haven't had a single day of fun the entire summer, so I feel anger and resentment constantly. Our fight ended with him telling me it makes no sense to start on this day and then he'll just do it the next day. He said I was being unreasonable and that everyone else would agree with him and not me. For context, today is Thursday and our tile guy comes on Monday, so the entire bathroom needs to be completely gutted by then. As soon as I read climbing, it's very obvious what the issue is. You're not the jerk. He made a commitment to this and it's unfair and illogical for him to back out the night before. He has plans and he can tell his friends that he can't make it. Climbing shouldn't be more important than a functioning bathroom in the family home. My boyfriend isn't talking with me over my customer service voice. What should I do? I truly cannot believe this is real. I'm 27 female, and my boyfriend who's 30 won't talk with me because of my customer service voice. We've been together for 2.5 years. We started living together a couple of months ago. When we met, we both had aspirations to move out of our current state to another a couple hours away. That's been something we've planned more heavily over the last year, and we got a place together in the new state a couple of months ago. I work from home, his job is hybrid and based in the state we live in. For the first couple of months, he was at work often, so he mostly only worked from home at night, after my workday had finished. My job doesn't involve a lot of phone calls, so I, for the past 2 months, haven't had to make any phone calls when he's been home, until 2 days ago. I had to call someone to schedule them, and as most people do, I put on my customer service voice, which is slightly different than my normal voice. My boyfriend was home and overheard me. When I wrapped up the call, he started teasing me a little bit, calling my customer service voice a name similar to mine but slightly different. Example, if my name was Jessica, he would call the voice I used Jesslyn or something like that, and saying, "Oh, Jesslyn sounds hot," just being playful like that. I thought it was a joke, so I played it off, but then he got more serious, saying, "No, seriously, that voice is way hotter than your real voice. Why don't you use that one instead?" And I told him it's because that's not my real voice, and I'm not going to fake my voice. He told me that it was just a voice, and it wouldn't hurt me to do it because he likes it. He's now refusing to talk to me unless I use that voice. This is the first time I've seen any red flags come up like this, and before this, we had an incredible relationship. What do I do now? This took such an unexpected turn, I don't even know what to say. I assumed the issue was going to be he was bothered by your customer service voice because it sounded fake, and even that was a stretch of a legitimate grievance. But this is just bizarre. If it were me, I'd find something to point out about him that you like better. Like, let's say he flexes his arm to show a muscle, and you say, "Oh wow, I like your arm so much better that way. You need to do that all the time because I like it better." My guess is that he's actually irrationally jealous she uses her hot voice for other people and not for him, and that's a him problem. Worst part is that it's not a sultry voice she's adopted. With her voice change, she's signaling she's ready to listen and is positively inclined towards the customer. He thinks it's hot to hear her signal she's catering to another. Tell him it's your work voice and he can't afford it. Well, in your best customer service voice, break up with him. He's too immature for you if he plays the silent treatment game. People do not play emotional control games if they're mature. Mature people have grown past those kinds of behaviors. Are you getting the point? Maybe ask him for something equally stupid. Ready for the downvotes, but here goes. He shouldn't have worded it that way. I think what he meant was that he found it much more attractive than how you normally treat him. For instance, I would love for my girlfriend to talk to me the way she talks on work calls. She sounds so sweet, kind, and helpful, enthusiastic. Then when she talks to me, it's always deadpan, low energy, never smiling, telling me to do things without saying please or thank you. My mom has even told me that she doesn't like how rude my girlfriend is to me, but when I talk to my girlfriend about it, she says that she's not going to be fake just to make my mom happy. But I hear her on her work calls, and she sounds like a completely different person. I would never expect her to use that sweet tone of voice with me, but to just feel respected and loved would be amazing. I would never bring that sort of thing up to her though, because I know she would completely lose it on me, which is never good. Karen lies about me and my family on TikTok. When I, 28 female, first met my sister-in-law, Anne, who's 30, I heard about her having a TikTok account based around looking after her old and disabled cats, but I don't use TikTok, so I never checked it out. That was until my husband's niece asked to meet for coffee to talk. At first, she asked me how I was doing mentally and what I had against my brother's girlfriend, Anne. I was beyond clueless because I thought me and Anne, were okay relationship-wise. Now don't get me wrong, I haven't spoken to her much because I'm extremely busy, but other than that, I couldn't think of anything. She pulled out her phone and showed me multiple TikToks of Anne telling her followers about my Just No family. I'll just list a few things. My mother being so proud of a Just No mother-in-law, they had to get a restraining order against her. I demanded my kids play with her cats and had a tantrum when she said no. I'm a nurse, so you know I've seen what happens when kids play with animals that they shouldn't. I'm dependent on my brother and demand he gives me all of his time and money. Me and my mother call everything she does in life shameful because she's not modest or religious like us. The last and worst is that I'm anti-everything, which as a nurse could have cost me my job. I ended up making an account, downloaded all the videos, and sent them to the family group chat. You can imagine what happened next, but instead of giving an answer, both my brother and sister-in-law blocked everyone. Anyone in my family who had the app followed her cat account, but were blocked on her main. My cousin ended up making a TikTok debunking her videos, but her account was already gone. My brother ended up calling me, screaming down the phone about his girlfriend having an anxiety attack, and I should have come to them first. Apparently, he said she makes up those stories for views so she can become a creator, and it also helps with her anxiety. He said if anything ever got out of hand, they would go on the record about it being made up. Not the jerk. She doesn't get to rip apart everybody's reputation with made-up stories for popularity. It would be one thing if it was fake people, but it's clear that she's giving away enough information that it's getting back to the people she's lying about. Agreed. Also, pretty sure OP and family could sue for defamation and slander if this is in the US. I'm really hoping OP is in the US, just in case the sister-in-law tries any of this crap again. How big of them to offer to come clean if anything got out of hand? And when would that have happened? After OP was facing discipline for this? The truth is that it already did get out of hand. The moment OP's niece saw the TikToks, it had gotten out of hand. I figure either OP's brother never considered that there are people outside of his family that would see these and bring them to people's attention, or he didn't know his significant other was doing this and is just scrambling to do damage control in an effort to protect her. Not the jerk. What was her plan if you lost your job because of her lies and then sued her for libel? OP. I asked my brother about that and he couldn't answer me. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for showing the TikToks to her family or not? Please let us know. I'd cut out both brother and sister-in-law. He's enabling her to do all this madness. But don't worry, he'll reap what he sows. Eventually, he's gonna be the one she turns on. Boyfriend expects me to move into a house without being a co-owner. I, 27 female, have been with Ben, 29 male, for 1.5 years. We agreed if we got married, we'd have a prenup and keep our finances separate. He was clear from day one he would never want to combine them. Ben bought a 5-bedroom house. He lives with friends and calculates their rent by dividing the mortgage by the number of people living in the house. His mortgage is high, in part because it's a 15-year mortgage. He had a bad credit score, and his down payment was small. This also doesn't give Ben any money to maintain the house. He uses credit cards and payday loans for urgent house repairs. Ben doesn't agree with my decision to prioritize my savings over paying off my subsidized student loans, things he thinks I should stop doing until I'm debt-free. I contribute to a 401k to maximize an employer match benefit. My checking and savings have 6 months of income. I'm building an investment account I might eventually use to buy a house. Ben has suggested I drain these accounts and use the money for debt repayment. He thinks I need to be more like him. At the end of the month, all of his extra money goes towards debt. He doesn't seem to care about the amount of debt I have, just that it exists, and I could be paying it off faster. Oh God, is this guy one of those Dave Ramsey nuts? I take it you don't like Dave Ramsey? The guy doesn't even know what Bitcoin is. Recently, Ben has been saying it's a waste of money for us to have 2 places and suggested I move in with him. We don't stay at his house often because of his roommates. I don't like his house and would rather keep my apartment. He argues the money I spend on rent is money we could be saving. I wouldn't be saving money, and I'd need to buy a car. The house is expensive for reasons I wouldn't benefit from, and it's big. I don't want to live with someone unless we are renting a place together or own a place together. I'm uncomfortable with him being the sole owner of the house we live in. He'd control how much we both have to spend on housing and what changes and upgrades are made. I want us to contribute equally and have an equal say in the decisions. He says we can't rent a place together because paying rent is money down the drain. And we can never own a house together because we agreed to have separate finances. I thought separate finances meant we could eventually buy a house as long as we split the down payment and mortgage 50-50. He thinks owning a house together is combining finances. I said that's fine. He can someday move into a house that I own. He said that was ridiculous, as I don't know when I'll be ready to buy a house. He said I have no valid reason for refusing to live in a house just because he owns it, and this would force him to either go back to renting or combine finances with me. He especially doesn't want to co-own a house with me because I'm irresponsible with debt. Am I the jerk for agreeing to separate finances and now being unwilling to live in a house I don't own? He just told you that you two are incompatible financially, not the jerk, and it's time to seriously consider the longevity of this relationship. OP. Yeah, I just feel bad because when we started dating, he checked if I was okay with separate finances. It seemed like we were compatible at the time. Now it feels like I'm changing my mind and I'm not okay with that situation. Should I have known that separate finances means we can't own or rent a home together? Absolutely not. You didn't change your mind. You offered a solution that would keep you both at even equity. He wants you to move in with him to help him relieve his poor debt choices. Edit to add, not the jerk. OP. My assumption of separate finances still included us owning a house together. I could give him a lump sum to match the equity he already owned in the house. We could use the money to remodel or refinance the mortgage. He'd add my name to the deed. After that, we'd split the mortgage evenly. I'd even be willing to pay more than 50% of the mortgage because I suspect I make more money than him. That's based on his job and what he said about his finances. I'm also willing to pay more for the things that matter to me that he doesn't care about. For example, he doesn't care that the carpet smells like cat pee. If my name was on the deed, I'd be willing to pay for it myself. Or I could pay more so we could afford to not have roommates. Make no mistake, he's counting on you paying for doing stuff like that without your name ever being on the house. OP. I don't even know yet if he'd let me make this improvement. I don't want to live in the house without certain improvements being made that he can't afford. I'm sort of backing him into a corner where if he wants to live with me, he has to accept a level of financial entanglement. Because of my debt, he might be right to object to that. He has a bad credit score. He takes out payday loans, which have extremely high interest rates. He has no savings. Otherwise, he wouldn't be taking out terrible payday loans. On the other hand, you are very responsible financially, and you want to be involved financially with this man. Why? The number one reason why couples argue is money. You're setting yourself up to be quite unhappy. I would rethink your plans. I don't know if you saw, but in OP's post, she said she's bad with money, something he's implied due to her debt, and she believes it from what she has said. Yet she's actually more financially sensible than he is, especially as her credit score is much better than his while being in debt. It suggests she at least keeps up with all her payments. He sounds horrible, as if he's trying to corner her into living with him on his terms, while she's trying to compromise and go 50-50. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. Dave Ramsey says the most common reasons for divorce involve fights about finances, your kids, and about your in-laws. You really have to be on the same page for these things to work out. Karen, I thought you didn't like Dave Ramsey. Oh, he's okay. We just disagree on a few things. Am I the jerk for telling my ex he and his wife need to stop fostering kids? My ex-husband is remarried to a very nice woman, Vanessa. They've been together for 8 years. While my ex-husband and I have 3 kids together, who are 12, 14, and 17, Vanessa isn't able to have any biologically. She's been an amazing stepmom to my kids, and I feel safe with them going there every other week. However, over the past 5 years that they've been married, Vanessa and my ex have fostered kids in hopes to adopt. They fostered a baby for 3 years from the time she came home to the hospital, and she ended up reunited with her family. It was extremely hard on the kids, as well as my ex and Vanessa. Immediately after, they began fostering another kid who was 5 years old and were supposed to adopt them. Right before Christmas, he was reunited with his biological father that they originally had no information on. This has been incredibly hard for the kids. They're devastated and started going to therapy after their first foster sister was removed from the home. Recently, my older 2 came to me and said they cannot take another loss. They keep getting very attached to these foster siblings and to only have them ripped away. It's not the fault of their dad or stepmom, and it's also amazing that these kids get to stay with their biological family, the goal of foster care. But it doesn't change how hard it is on them. They told me that their dad and stepmom have been talking about taking on a new placement in the new year and have said they won't live with their father if they do so. They had tried talking to him, but all they got was, "It's the reality of foster care." I went to my ex and Vanessa to talk about the kids. They kept saying that this is the reality of foster care, that it hurts them too, but they feel they're at least offering a loving and safe home to these kids. I asked, what about the kids that they have already? My ex-husband's argument is that they'll be off to college soon. I asked why they can't at least wait for the older 2 to leave the home, and they asked, what if Vanessa got pregnant? Would they get to control that? I argued that would be different. That's not a sibling they'd risk losing. I ultimately said what the kids did. If they continued to foster, our elder kids would choose to not come around as much, and I'd support them in court. If our youngest wanted to keep up the custody agreement, that's fine, but I'd keep them in therapy. My ex called me and said Vanessa has been sobbing all weekend after my threat. He says it's not fair to ask this of them and make them decide. I told him it's up to him to decide what he could live with. Am I the jerk? Edit. I thought it was clear, but my ex and his wife have them every other week. We alternate holidays and such. Edit 2. Many people keep asking if my kids understand what fostering means. They do. They understand the logistics of fostering. That doesn't mean they can help their emotions. Their therapist has said they are traumatized by these events. Edit 3. Potentially the final update. I did reach out to my ex and his wife. I apologized for telling them that they shouldn't foster again, as that part is none of my business. I did share that I feel it might be beneficial for the two of them and the kids to see a family therapist or mediator so all sides can be heard. They actually agreed that it's a good idea and they're going to find a different therapist just so there's no bias, which I support. What happens from this point is beyond my control and business. I am hopeful that my kids can continue to have a strong and healthy relationship with their father and stepmother. To those that said my kids should naturally be stronger or doubted their trauma, I sincerely hope you do more research and learn that needing therapy doesn't make you weak or spoiled. It helps with coping strategies and gives a safe place to talk about their feelings. To those that accused me of being jealous or bitter, no, I'm remarried with another kid. I'm happy for them and wish them nothing but happiness and peace in the future. Not the jerk. Firstly, they should not be going into fostering with the sole intention of adopting, unless they are specifically taking in only kids who have already had the goal of their case changed to adoption, which doesn't seem to be the case here. The goal of foster care is always first and foremost reunification. Adoption should only become the goal where absolutely necessary. They're going to struggle to be good advocates for those kids when their goal is to take that kid away from their family. I also assume their skewed goal is impacting what they're telling your kids and leading to your kids taking the reunification much harder. Secondly, wanting to help kids in need should not and cannot come at the deficit of the well-being of your existing kids. You are right to stand up for your kids. OP says in the comments that their goal was supposed to be adoption for both kids and relatives were discovered after they were placed. Also, the post and comments indicate that they are aware of and understand that the process will inherently involve kids getting reunited with their family, and they're willing to accept that. While your second point has merit, your first is crucifying them based on an incorrect assumption. Not the jerk. What they're doing is amazing, but here's the thing. It's hard on your kids, and as their parent, it's your job to advocate for them. You're right that your ex and Vanessa can foster later. They're doing a good thing for those kids who they foster. It's just hard for their own kids. Not the jerk. Your kids sound like they're hurting a lot. I can't imagine it's been easy for them, and it sounds like their therapist is agreeing with the kids that it's been really hurting them. They said they talked to their dad about it and it got nowhere. You aren't butting into a stranger's business. These are your kids, and they asked you, their mother, to intervene. No matter what all the "you're the jerks" are saying here, you're actually responsible for the mental health of your kids. And that includes what happens at their other parent's house. You can't stop them from continuing to foster, but you can respect your kids' wishes. Your oldest is past the age where they get legal input for custody agreements. I'm not sure about the 14-year-old. If your kids decide that they need to protect their hearts from another loss, and both they and their therapist think this is the best option, then as their mom, you're doing the right thing. It doesn't make it easy. It's an awful and heartbreaking situation, but your priority isn't your ex's desire to foster or to adopt, no matter how needed good foster parents are. It's the mental health of your kids. It's not pretty, but it is what it is. Well, who do you think is in the right? OP or her ex-husband? Please let us know. OP is trying to save her kids from having their hearts broken. Dad is being selfish and focusing only on what he and his new wife want. Evil step-grandmother tries to ruin my Christmas, but I unintentionally ruin hers instead. Cast. We've got my former stepdad and we've got my former step-grandmother, who we'll call Karen. Karen would even encourage my younger stepsister, who we'll call Anna, to tease and harass me as much as possible, just to provoke me and give Karen more of a reason to torment me. When I was 9 years old, I moved back from Colorado to California to live at Karen's house with my mother and two younger siblings, while stepdad stayed back in Colorado for a few more months to finish up his contract in the Army. We were staying there so that my stepdad can save up for us to be able to move out into an apartment together. I absolutely hated living at Karen's house. She made it a goal to make me as miserable as possible while we lived with her. She made sure not to do it in front of my mother either, and would deny everything I would say whenever I would run crying to my mother about it. The sad thing is, my mother believed me but would do nothing about it whatsoever. But that's another story entirely. Karen enforced a bedtime on me without TV, which is realistically understandable in of itself, except for the fact that Anna could stay up and watch TV herself secretly in Karen's room. Just another way for her to mess with me. I had no sense of safety or security in that house. I would stay in my room and away from Karen as much as I possibly could. I wouldn't even go into the kitchen and get food if I was hungry just because I was afraid. She would be right there ready to mess with me if I wanted something to eat, so I only ate dinner in that house because my mother would be there, and I reluctantly knew that was the only safe chance I had to eat. I still ate at school and everything, but it's a shame I couldn't eat when I wanted to at any point because Karen had placed that much anxiety and stress in me. For the next part of this story, I want to quickly give some context. I fell in love with Pokemon as a kid and would religiously play Yellow version on my Game Boy Pocket every single day. I very badly had been wanting a Game Boy Color since it first came out. Fast forward to Christmas time, we're all opening gifts. My siblings and I all get some toys each for different things we like from mother and stepdad. Next, I open my last gift from Karen, which is some cheap battery-powered Pokemon game that's shaped like a Pokeball with no screen and a bunch of red lights that come in the kind of plastic packaging you need scissors to open all around the edges. Anna opens her last gift from Karen, and it's a green Game Boy Color. I immediately started crying, not because I was ungrateful and expected more. I'm always appreciative with any gifts that I get. It was because I knew for a fact that Karen did that to deliberately get to me. The reason I know this is because Anna didn't play video games ever. She had a Nintendo 64 with a few games, but that thing collected dust until I started living there. Anna didn't even ask for a Game Boy Color for Christmas. All she wanted was Rugrats figures. After all of that happened, I went to my real dad for the rest of Christmas and to spend time with him and that side of the family. I open all my gifts and get a bunch of cool stuff, toys and some Batman pajamas. Finally, my dad gives me 2 final gifts to open. I open the first box and it's Pokemon Gold and Silver, and I'm already beyond thrilled, thinking it can't get any better than this. I open the next gift and it's a purple Game Boy Color. I could not contain myself. I was so happy, it really felt like a dream come true. After some time with my dad's family, I return home to Karen's house and run inside, excitedly holding up my Game Boy Color, showing my mother and stepdad. Karen sees the Game Boy Color in my hand and immediately storms off to her room and slams the door as hard as she can to not be seen again for the rest of that day/night. Even my mother, who doesn't even bother to defend me, couldn't help but find it funny that her plan to ruin my Christmas had backfired on her. I recently told my dad this story on Christmas this year, and he and I both had a good chuckle over it. Am I the jerk for telling my parents I would not visit them again until they learned sign language? When I was 18, I was in an accident that caused TBI, resulting in me losing most of my hearing in both ears, making me deaf. I didn't qualify for cochlear implants, so being deaf was just my new reality. Obviously, this derailed my life for a while. University got pushed back, and I was depressed for a long time. Eventually, I got back out there, discovered the deaf community, learned ASL, American Sign Language, and at 26, I now feel very content with my life. My parents were devastated by my accident, and our relationship has never been the same. A few years ago, I told them I have embraced being deaf, and I asked them if they would learn American Sign Language, as this is now how I prefer to communicate. They said no at the time because they didn't have time to learn a new language. I've tried many times over the years to try to give them information on deafness and ASL, but they have shown no interest. We communicate now mainly by using voice-to-text on our phones, which is far from perfect and very chaotic when multiple people are talking. Trying to keep up with conversations is exhausting, and people are constantly getting frustrated with me for not following along. Often we watch movies, but they refuse to turn the captions on because it's annoying, despite the fact that it means I can't understand the movie at all. This past Christmas, I once again struggled with conversations, which once again resulted in me being either ignored or yelled at. Before I went home again, I set my parents down and told them that if they did not begin to learn American Sign Language, I would not be visiting again for a long time. I told them I don't expect them to ever be fluent, but I need them to show effort in learning. I told them that they have continuously dismissed my needs as a deaf person, and that if they want to continue to have a meaningful relationship with me, we need to have some kind of shared language. This didn't go over well at all, as my parents accused me of wanting to cut them off, which isn't true. I just can't do any more visits where my presence feels like a burden. My brother and I have been texting since then, and he thinks I'm being hugely unfair. So, am I the jerk? Edit. I can't respond to everyone, but thank you everyone so much for your kind words and support. I've been spending the last few days wondering if I'm being unreasonable or dramatic, as even though my friends, most of whom are deaf, support me, I didn't know what the hearing would think of this. I can now see that my parents are clearly being unfair. Not the jerk. They can't even turn on the captions? What the heck? No, they are being unfair. Also, they either can't or don't want to learn ASL. Either way, you cannot keep accommodating them while they do nothing to accommodate you. You're doing the right thing. Either they will come around or they won't. Just live your life around people who appreciate you and make you happy. I wish you all the best. Not the jerk. I'm furious for you. They find captions annoying? Your post doesn't make it clear if your parents have always been jerks or if they are in some sort of weird denial. In my limited experience, the deaf community really is a community. Find your new village and prosper. Yeah, it ticks me off when people act like that. Asking people to learn even just a little American Sign Language is wildly unfair? The closed captions are annoying? Forget that. What's unfair is someone to get into an accident bad enough to practically lose most of your hearing, and then their family refusing to accommodate, being unsympathetic, yell at them, and actively treat them like a burden for a situation they cannot control. What's annoying is being forced into social situations where they can't understand what's happening besides through body language and maybe context, being excluded and treated like crap. OP, find people who will actually take the time for you. Your family won't take the time for you and didn't when they should have been. Find a new home and a new family, one that you deserve. Am I the jerk for telling my husband that I'll stop paying for everything, including therapy, if he doesn't start looking for a job? My husband, male 32, and I, female 33, have been together for a total of 4 years. He's dealt with depression and anxiety since 2019. He completely shut down, quit his job, sold his car, emptied his savings, and stopped seeing friends and family, and started spending his day doing nothing. Not a thing. None. It took months before realizing he was dealing with a mental health issue, and I've arranged for him to see a therapist. He was against it at first, but then agreed to give it a try. He got better and his quality of life improved. He regained his quality of life. He started going out and became sociable. He bought a new car and did a 180 makeover from hair, clothes, and working out, and even adopted 2 dogs. It was miraculous, and I was happy that he got his life back. Except that he still doesn't work. Not only that, but I used my money to get this transformation done. When I tried to talk to him about finding a job, since he's now doing well, he tried to put the idea off and say he needs more therapy to be ready to start committing to a job and start working. This went on for months, and he jumped from therapist to therapist and still said he's not ready to look for a job, yet goes out with his friends, eats food with them, buys new gadgets, and now a screen to watch his favorite shows. Last night, we had a huge argument after I found out he bought a $200 wristwatch for himself using my credit card. I couldn't handle it, and I shouted at him that it was time for him to find a job. He tried to use the, "I'm still not ready for that kind of commitment yet," but I blocked his attempt and told him I'd stop paying for everything, including his therapy. He got mad and replied that threatening to stop paying for everything, even his therapy, will set him back, and we both won't get where we want to be. But I told him he was a hypocrite for saying he's not ready to look for a job since he's living completely normal, and may I say, lavish life. He called me unbelievable and walked out. He called his mom, telling her I was losing it, and she got in the middle, telling me off about what I said, and told me to have some sympathy for him as he's still struggling to regain his strength, but I told her to stay out of it, which caused more rage from my in-laws. They're arranging for a meeting with me, but I don't plan on going, which might make matters worse. I just think at this point he's milking it. Am I the jerk for my stance? What is worse is that now I'm the bad guy in my in-laws' eyes. They accused me of trying to hold his progress back when I said I won't pay for therapy anymore, and financially keep controlling him, and claimed that I'm preventing him from getting better. Not the jerk. Die on this hill, OP. Speak to a lawyer and see what your options are. As it stands, you have a kid, not a partner. Treat him accordingly. How can you be ready for the commitment of a relationship/marriage when you can't commit to going to work for a few hours? His parents should be homing him and helping him if he's that needy, and they're so concerned for his recovery on your dollar. He's riding that gravy train hard. Don't let this continue, OP. This is ridiculous. Not the jerk. He's using you. I have mental health problems. Oh, do I? So I'm not unsympathetic. But no, put on your own oxygen mask first. Your own mental health does not need to suffer in order to help, pamper, or enable your husband. OP. Yeah, this is the reason I said he's living lavishly, at my expense even. I didn't want to be pushy about him finding a job, but right now I feel like he's using excuses, and my in-laws are calling me the unsupportive one after everything I've done. Not the jerk. You signed up for a partner, not a kid, and it's wrong for an adult to get their parents involved in their marital issues. I would go to this meeting and tell your husband and in-laws he can move back home to his parents if he doesn't want to be a responsible adult. My guess is his parents don't want him back, and that's why they're trying to get you to continue being his mother. Not the jerk. Honestly, you need to make sure this man doesn't have access to any of your finances. While he may seem to have done a 180, he's probably just spiraling still. He's getting his serotonin hit by accumulating stuff and via spending money. This won't stop. It will get worse until he actually deals with his issues. Honestly, if his mother wants him back, pack his bags and send him back to her. Pretty sure when he hits her credit cards for hundreds, she'll change her mind. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. If Reddit boy ever tried to pull that crap with me, he'd need a new head. Cold hard cash? Sure thing. Prefacing this with the information that 1. My grandma has too much money. 2. My grandma has too much time. 3. My grandma has too big of a freezer. And 4. My grandma is petty as heck. The story. I have a cousin who's always wanted all sorts of interesting things for his birthday. Grandma loved that. Absolutely adored it. She gave him a turtle ocarina once, and I love it. That should explain her gifting for you. Now, as he grew up, he was less and less inclined to entertain Grandma's whimsical ideas and started requesting more mainstream presents. Grandma hated that and still found ways to make them whimsical. You want a guitar? Okay, but it'll have hippie wood-burning patterns on it. You want bed sheets? Sure thing, but they'll have tie-dye prints all over and be made of silk. If it was possible to make a gift whimsical, Grandma would do it. We all knew this and started getting awfully specific in what we requested until one year he threw his hands up and said, I don't know, just give me cold hard cash. Bad move. Very bad move. Grandma has chest freezers, the kind that are 4 feet deep, 4 feet across, and 12 feet long. Grandma also lives in a little foresty cottage plot, which means Grandma has access to all sorts of gardening tools and tinkers. So Grandma, being Grandma, found a big bucket, a ton of little plastic seed bags, and got to work. Cousin, of course, was very excited to finally get a normal gift and was grinning at Grandma, thinking that he finally won the game. That is, until Grandma brought out a 2x2x2 squared ice cube full of cash. Edited to add, measurements might be off. She used some sort of gardening bucket, and I was very angry when it happened. This story has been retold by Grandma so many times that I don't think she remembers the exact measurements either. It wasn't frozen together either. Oh no. Grandma had gotten creative and layered the ice gradually, freezing the cash solidly through the cube. This thing was icy white and oozing when brought into the room, and Grandma proudly announced that since he wanted cold hard cash, she gave him exactly that. This mad woman froze the equivalent of $1,000 in the ice in mixed money, which were tiny coins and bigger coins and bills in little seed bags near the center. It took the block about a week to melt because my cousin's birthday is in January, and his mother refused to let it melt in the house for the fear of water damage, so it was set in their garage slowly melting. Edited to add, bathtubs aren't common where I'm from, and they didn't have one. Moral of the story, don't mess with Grandma and her whimsical presents. My sister dined and dashed at a restaurant. I refused to pay her bill and gave them her information. This happened last night. My sister and her boyfriend recently moved to a town next to mine. I was excited as we'll be able to see more of each other now. Nearby, there's a downtown center that has a lot of shopping, restaurants, galleries, etc. There's one upscale restaurant that both my husband and I love. A dinner for two will run you about $200 to $250, so it's not a place we frequently go to. My sister called me last week and invited us out to dinner with them at the restaurant last night. I reminded her it was an upscale place and to take a look at the menu beforehand because they are pricey and we can go somewhere else, tons of other great places. She said they still wanted to go. We hadn't been there in a while, so we accepted. Dinner was great. At the end of the meal, my sister excuses herself to the bathroom, and when she doesn't come back relatively soon, her boyfriend goes to find her. After a while, neither of them come back. We go to check for them, and they're gone. I call and text her, and she texts back that they've left, but thanks for dinner. It was just as amazing as you said it would be. I asked her what she meant, but no response. I texted again, asking if she really just stuck us with the bill, and no response. I then texted that I never agreed to pay for them, and that she had 30 minutes to come back to the restaurant or I'll give the restaurant all her information and they will likely involve the police. No response. At the 30-minute mark, I called and texted and got no response, so I stayed true to my word. I paid for mine and my husband's portion and gave all her information to the manager for their portion and then left. The next day, she called me back, upset that she's been getting calls from the restaurant asking her to come pay or they'll contact the police. I said I'm not surprised since she skipped out on her bill. She said she thought I was paying the tab since I've paid for our dinners in the past. I've paid for her plus me only dinners, where the total tab was $60 max. I said this was obviously different than the other times we met for dinner. This was all 4 of us and at an upscale restaurant. I was not paying the $450 tab and she had to cover her portion. I reminded her that she invited us out and chose the restaurant. I specifically asked if she wanted to go somewhere else, but she's the one who insisted on going to this restaurant. I never agreed to pay for everyone. She then said she thought I'd just pay, but when I asked the waiter for separate checks, she realized I wasn't and left for the bathroom planning to ditch. I said that since the restaurant hadn't contacted the police yet, all she had to do was go in and pay, and it would be settled. She didn't want to do that because it would be too embarrassing and asked me to cover it. I again said no and that she had to take care of it. Our family has gotten involved and I'm being pressured to just pay the bill. Am I the jerk if I don't and let the restaurant call the police? Clearly, I will not be paying for anything ever again. Edit. Only answering a few questions as I'm seeing that I'm not the jerk and it's only been less than an hour. This event really made me feel like a piggy bank and not a sister, which is the most upsetting. We are all early to mid-30s. She's never really been this terrible, but she has almost always found a way to bring my salary into conversations. For example, the first time I met her boyfriend, we were talking about cars as he just bought a brand new car. I said I'd like to get into a new car, but that I can't afford it right now. True, I'm a saver and not a spender. And her response was, "You make this much. You can definitely afford that car." This event really made me feel like a piggy bank and not a sister, which is the most upsetting. Not the jerk. Your sister and her boyfriend's behavior was so gross. It is commonly understood that the assumption is that the bill will be split unless previously agreed that one person is paying. Tell your family to pay your bill if they are so concerned. Not the jerk. Why doesn't the family that's pressuring you pay for the bill? Not the jerk. She admitted that when you asked for 2 checks, she decided to ditch you. She has to pay for her own meals. If she invited you to dinner and chose the restaurant, she should have known that you obviously weren't going to pay for her. She sounds really childish, and the family has no business to pressure you into paying her bill. Well, what would you have done in this situation? Would you have given the restaurant your sister's information, or would you have just paid for her? Please let us know. I would have given them all of her info. She thinks she can use you, OP. Prove her wrong. Professor fails me because my group went ghost during group project. So I was in a speech class. It was my last semester, completely online due to lockdown. Our professor assigned us a group speech that we were to record and send to him by the due date. I thought it would be easy enough as he gave us 2 weeks to work on it and group speeches weren't anything new to me. He even made separate discussion boards for our groups that we could use to communicate. This project was worth 30% of our grades, so failing this project meant you would pretty much fail the course. I wanted to get it done early so we wouldn't have to worry about it, so I immediately posted a message to everyone in the group asking when they were free to do a Zoom meeting to discuss the project. No reply for a few days by any of them. I then post again, this time a little more stern as it didn't seem any of them cared enough to even reply at all. I waited a few more days. At this point, we only had a week left before it was due, so I just divided up the work and posted what everyone would need to write their portion of the speech about and gave them a date/time that I would be holding a Zoom meeting for the final recording to send to the professor. Still no reply. It was now the day before the speech was to be recorded and 2 days before the speech was due, and my group members had not made an attempt to make contact in any form at all. So I did the only thing I could think of and emailed my professor explaining the situation. But I assumed he would not reply because throughout the entire semester, it took him over a week to reply to any emails I had sent him. I then did the entire group project on my own, which took me the entire night with no sleep. After I finished writing everyone's speech, it was around the time I had scheduled the Zoom meeting to record. I joined it out of amusement, knowing nobody in my group would be there. Sure enough, it was empty. So I did the entire speech myself. But the rubric really put emphasis on transitioning to the other group members, including saying their name. So between every section where it would cut to a different member, I would say something like, "And now, my name will explain the importance of blah blah blah." Then mute my screen briefly as if to add a cut, put on a different hat, and continue the speech. I did this for all 6 portions of the speech. I turned in the speech shortly after and filled out the group member role sheet that was due as well. I just put my name in every box that was supposed to be a different member. A week passes and I see he graded the project, still not replying to my previous email about the situation, by the way, and he gave me a 0, stating it was supposed to be a group project, and me doing it solo meant I did not follow instructions. I was actually infuriated by this and knew that emailing him about the grade was as good as useless, so I went straight above him to the board of college and explained to them what happened. They apologized and said the situation would be resolved, and within a few hours of me talking to the board, he had replied to my email 3 times stating that he was very sorry for the miscommunication about the project and that my grade would be corrected, scolded me for going above him, saying I should have just emailed him again if I couldn't get in contact with my classmates, and putting the blame on me for not trying harder to reach out to them. The next semester, I saw that he was no longer with the school. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Horrible professors are many in number and should all be sacked. My guess is that it was a habit of his to not reply to emails, and he got fired for it. Also, his corrected grade was a 70, but I was so mentally exhausted from the situation at that point that I didn't care to fight it anymore. Many professors believe that group projects are the closest you'll find to the real world, and they're probably right if they include real-world accountability. Where they go off track is when they fail to account for the fact that the individual student is paying for the class and should receive a grade based on their specific contributions and achievements. After all, there's no such thing as a group transcript or a group degree. It's unfair and unreasonable to punish a diligent student for the inaction of lazy students if they haven't simultaneously provided a mechanism for the diligent student to hold their lazy peers accountable. If one person manages to produce an adequate result in spite of others not doing their part, I'd give them maximum credit. If they produce a superior result, I'd give extra credit. If they were unable to produce a viable result and could demonstrate that this was primarily because others refused to participate, I'd simply not count that assignment as part of their final grade. What do you think about group projects? Did you like them when you were in school or hate them? Please let us know. Oh, I despised group projects. I also despised the jerks who assigned them. Am I the jerk for telling my mom if she doesn't stop buying things for my sister, I will uninvite her to my wedding? I'm getting married, and my 19-year-old sister is being ridiculous. She's very jealous of the attention my fiancé is getting and trying to upstage her and compete. This all started when I proposed. I saved for a while because my fiancé is a gorgeous girl and I wanted the ring to be really special. When we first saw my mom, she was showing it off and my sister got quiet and then left the room for a while. She didn't compliment it or say congratulations. At the next gathering with extended family, the ring got a lot of attention and my sister seemed sad. My mom ended up buying her a diamond bracelet with some sapphires. When I commented, my mom said it just seemed fair because she has my stepdad to buy her jewelry, my fiancé has me, and my sister has no one. How to raise a Karen 101. Then my fiancé invited them both wedding dress shopping. She said my sister was sulky at the appointment and kept saying she didn't feel good and laying her head on my mom. My fiancé called my mom at some point to talk about colors and the family coordinating, and my mom said my sister already had a dress because she couldn't wait and showed us a very sparkly, very beaded lavender gown. My fiancé told me she is familiar with that designer and my mom dropped some serious cash. At the bridal shower, my sister was sulky again and refused to eat, so my mom took her and left to buy her frozen yogurt because she was dizzy. The final straw was the bachelorette party. My sister and mom were invited to the dinner before the big party, and my sister wanted a $200 lobster. My mom told her that was rude since my future mother-in-law was paying, and then asked my mother-in-law if it would be okay if she, my mom, paid for my sister's dinner and bought her the lobster. The bridesmaids were lightly teasing my sister about how she's going to have to be my fiancé's slave the day of, and my mom snapped at them very harshly that my sister doesn't have to do a thing. My sister ended up yelling that it's dumb that we're having so many parties, engagement, shower, bachelorette, and wedding, so pretty standard I think. She said we don't need all of those parties and it's just an excuse for attention. My fiancé was hurt and shocked. I just found out that my mom threw a party for my sister the weekend after the bachelorette. She actually rented a beach house for my sister and her friends and paid for hair and makeup. To me, that is crazy. I called my mom and we got into it, and I told her she is enabling my sister's toxic jealousy, and if she keeps it up, she won't be invited to the wedding. My mom didn't say much, but sent me an angry text about how she has handed so much to me and no one ever did that for her. She worked for her money, and I will not tell her what to do with it. She can light it on fire if she wants to. I haven't responded. She also thinks this is fine and normal because my sister is going through a breakup. Gee, I wonder why old boy broke up with her. Not the jerk. Your mom is right, and she can spend her money how she wishes. She clearly chooses to use the money to buy love from your sister. Your sister is throwing temper tantrums because things are not about her, and your mom enables it 100%. I wouldn't invite them to the wedding because I guarantee your sister will pout and sulk until she gets whatever she is after, and your mom will ignore your day and focus on your sister. You and your other half deserve to have the day be about you, and not about a 19-year-old who was never taught to share the spotlight. Not the jerk. Your mother is enabling your sister, and I really fear for what extreme she is going to go with at the wedding to try to upstate your fiancé. OP is lucky his sister isn't in a relationship. I can see this being one of those situations where she would get engaged at the wedding for the attention. Not the jerk. Are you sure your sister is 19? Because she's acting like she's 9. Let me condense it. Your younger sister likely gets most of the attention at home. Someone else is getting more attention than her now, you and your fiancé. This made your younger sister so angry that she's purposely sabotaging all events by trying to act sick and make it so the attention is on her. Your mother is clearly the reason she's acting this way. She is funding a lavish dress and weekend for your younger sister. My advice, families get crazy around weddings. This wedding is about you and your fiancé only. I would personally not allow your mom or sister near the bride on the wedding day and set boundaries ASAP. Edit. Don't uninvite your mom. I'd have a very clear conversation with your mother and your sister that the behavior of your sister at these events has been strange at best. I'm more concerned about your sister's behavior and not your mom spending her money on her. And you would like them to be supportive on your big day, especially with your fiancé. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you uninvite your mom and sister from the wedding or not? Please let us know. Yeah, I think I'd uninvite them from my life, to be honest. You said 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. I worked for a trucking company. They made sucrose for different food plants in the area, Turkey Hill, Pepsi, etc. My job was to wash the inside of the liquid sucrose trailers so they could be reloaded. This was done by hooking them up to an automated wash system. I drove the lot, picked up an empty trailer, took it to the 2-trailer wash bay building, hooked it up, and ran the cycle, then parked the wash trailer in the loading staged area. I was hired as a temp to replace the previous first shift guy who injured his knee. When I was hired, him and a guy who kinda knew the job taught me how to do it. But there was only the one official first shift person who knew the job. The other guy just kind of fumbled his way through it. Then there was a second shift guy who knew the job as well. The job required you to be extremely active. You worked in a room that would sometimes seem like it rained from all the steam condensing on the ceiling because you were washing 2 at a time with 190+ degree water for a 20-minute session. I ended up being hired full-time from the temp agency. The company actually bought out my contract because I was doing so well, and the first shift guy ended up retiring due to his injury. About a year later, the second shift guy quits out of nowhere, so they hire a new guy, and now I have to train him. This guy is less than good at the job. I keep telling management that, but you know, they're management. Eventually, he ends up dropping a trailer off at the lift truck before putting the lift down, bending the landing gear, and doing $11,000 in damage. Anytime there's an accident, they require a drug test. He tested positive and was fired. I ended up having to do first and second shift by myself since I was the only person who knew the job. It wasn't that bad because second shift didn't have as many trailers, so a 10-hour day and I'd usually be done. Eventually, they hired a new guy, very big fellow, and this didn't seem like a fit for him. About 3 months in, the loaders come over because there's no clean trailer staged. They found him passed out on top of a trailer. They honestly thought he had a heart attack or something, but it turned out he was just drunk, so he got fired. Guess who's back to working both shifts? At first, it wasn't too bad. I could get 4 trailers done in an hour, so 32 in an 8-hour shift, but only if I'm busting my tail. There was literally no way to do it any faster since there's a 20-minute wash cycle and you still have to pull 2 trailers in and hook them up. Normally, there were about 25 trailers for first shift and 8 to 10 for second shift. But then, a company that took 5+ dry trailers a shift for first and third, and 3 to 5 a shift for second, tripled their order for wet trailers due to their on-site processing plant shutting down. I went from 10-hour days to working 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. for like a month straight. In the summer, in a building that got about 10+ degrees hotter than the ambient air was, I kept telling my supervisor, my plant manager, and the company manager that I couldn't keep this up. I kept being told I had to do my job. Do as you're told. Well, the time I worked from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. Thursday and back in at 5:30 a.m. Friday, that was the day I caused $5,000 in damages. I backed a trailer out without unhooking it first, ruining the hoses, and pulling a pump off the mounts. So now I had to get drug tested, and since the last 2 guys failed, on the drive there, my manager asked me if I was going to fail. I said it depends what they test for. He said they test for everything. I asked if that included caffeine and exhaustion. He just kind of blankly looked at me, then turned back to the road. Drug test passed, taken back to work. Now I only have 1 wash bay to use due to the damage I caused, and I have to back into it because it's the first bay that's broken in a pull-through setup and maintenance is there repairing it. I ended up being there till almost 1 again. Monday I come in, having almost fell asleep on the drive. I pulled my manager aside, the plant manager aside, and the owner's son aside. They all said, I just gotta do the job I was hired to do what I'm told. They said they're working to find a new person, so I just need to keep doing my trailers. So Tuesday, that's what I did. When I was hired, I was told my schedule was from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and the trailers in that time slot were mine, along with the first 2 second shift trailers, if they were there by 2:30. So I got there at 7. Did only the first shift trailers and second shift trailers as I was told when I got hired, and clocked out at 3 p.m. I shut my phone off and took my girlfriend to the fair. The next morning, I went in at 7 once again and got to work. The supervisor and plant manager get in at 9, and 9:05 they're in my office. I get escorted to the office of the owner's son, where he proceeded to chew me out for a solid 45 minutes. I just sat there and let him rant. Turns out, once I left, my supervisor and plant manager had to do my job. And you know, since they were supervisors and plant managers, obviously they were trained in the position and knew exactly what to do. They managed to do 4 trailers from 5 p.m. when they realized I left until midnight. This is the same amount I could do in 1 hour. So once his rant was over, I said, well, clearly you're not going to fire me. He was taken aback. I continued, you have no one who can do my job. You didn't take me seriously when I said I couldn't do it alone anymore, and so I decided I'd show you how important I was. I've got a kid and a life outside this job. The pay is great, but I'm not going to hurt myself to get it and put in 90 to 110-hour weeks in the dead of summer. You said 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. when I got hired. That was what I was told, so that's what I did. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me a raise and 3 weeks paid vacation. You're going to let me pick the guy who takes second shift. If you can't find someone willing to take second, I will train them on first and transfer to second when they're fully trained. But I'll get the shift differential on top of my raise if I do that. He looked at me like I just robbed him, but then after a solid 5 silent minutes, he agreed. See, each trailer that didn't get washed the night before was assessed a late fee by the company who it went to, anywhere from $500 to $5,000. And just last night, I had cost them $21,000 in fees. I think he realized that would quickly be a problem if they had no one to wash any trailers. We ended up pulling over the guy who kinda knew how to do the job from first shift that helped train me when I started there. He took first shift and I went to second. I ended up being the highest paid employee the wet department and any department that wasn't management or QC actually, in only 2 years of being there, when there were guys who had been loaders for 15 plus years. I stayed another year or so, but eventually it was more nonsense and I had my fill. Am I the jerk for customizing my burger? For my niece's 10th birthday, a few days ago we went to a restaurant. I'm pretty picky about food, so I thought it would be easier, rather than to complain about the burger place she wanted to go to, I'd just take along some of my own stuff. The actual meat is okay, but they do horrible, oversweet brioche and fancy named complex burgers, and it makes the food basically inedible. It's so disgusting. I ordered their most basic burger with just some lettuce and had brought my own bread, some cheese, and some barbecue sauce. Nobody said anything at the time. None of the staff cared, and honestly, I think the guys at the next table were pretty jealous. But afterwards, my sister told me I was being a total jerk and ruined the evening and drew all of the attention away from my niece on her birthday. My niece didn't seem unhappy. Basically, nobody commented beyond, "Haha, don't you want one of these fancy burgers?" I got to eat food that was actually edible, and I don't think I was being a jerk, but I don't know. Was my sister just being weird, or does she have a point? You're the jerk. And the staff may not have said anything, and if they were waitstaff who are employees, they may not have cared because it doesn't affect them. But I guarantee that the restaurant owners and management would have cared if they were aware, because what you did is a massive legal liability for them. You don't bring your own food into an eating establishment, period. Trust me, I get the desire to do so. I'm not just picky, I am autistic with major food aversions. And over the course of my life, it has been a massive challenge for me to eat in certain places. But it's not just about being a jerk or socially inappropriate. Restaurants can be legally liable for what people eat on their premises, and anything that happens to them as a result of ingesting those foods. So right from the outset, you're the jerk for putting their business at risk. On top of that, it's obnoxious to go into a place of business and literally bring for yourself the things they're trying to make a living selling. It implies to other customers that there is something problematic with the food that the restaurant is selling. It's actively raising questions about the quality of the business's product while you sit on their premises. So that also makes you the jerk. If you didn't like what they had to offer, you could have eaten before or after and just gone to be there for your niece. A restaurant isn't your personal kitchen table, it's a place of business. You don't get to walk in there and make yourself a meal with your own food for a myriad of reasons. You're the jerk, and shockingly lacking in social graces. You're the jerk, however, not to the point where you ruined an evening. You're asking if your sister was just being weird. No. The weird one was the person that stares back at you in the mirror first thing in the morning. Your actions weren't normal in any setting, not even close. If you keep this type of behavior up, you'll forever be known as the weird, eccentric, crazy cat lady auntie. I take offense at the crazy cat lady bit. Am I the jerk for firing my brother's girlfriend over the phone? I, 35 female, am the owner of a coffee shop. Linda, 23 female, is one of my employees who joined 6 months ago. 4 months ago, she met my older brother, who's 37, and they started dating. Ever since they started dating, Linda has been acting like she owns the place. She never comes on time and treats my other employees rudely. Every time I scold Linda, I end up receiving a call from my brother telling me not to pester his girlfriend. Recently, I've had enough. She's been shirking her responsibilities lately. Even after the holiday period ended, she chose not to show up. I called her up today, and she told me that she didn't feel like coming in. I've told her that I had enough, and that I was finally going to fire her. I told her we only needed diligent employees here, and that she was clearly not one of them. Hours later, my brother stormed into my house, yelling at me for firing his girlfriend. My husband kicked him out of the house, and I was honestly so annoyed. My parents think I'm the jerk for firing my brother's girlfriend and for kicking my brother out of our house. Am I the jerk? Update. I received a call from my brother who's very upset as Linda has dumped him. He says that had I not fired Linda, he wouldn't have gotten dumped. To a certain degree, that may be true. However, if I hadn't fired Linda, that would have been only disadvantageous for my coffee shop business. I think this makes things very clear now. Well, if she wants to be fired in person, she should show up. Not the jerk. Should have done it sooner. And it doesn't sound like she would be an understanding person if being fired in person. Having drama and a person screaming in a business is quite bad for their image, especially a small business and a place where people go chill out and relax, like a coffee shop. Most people who see a scene like that between worker and owner just don't go back and comment on it when people mention that specific place. Quite bad for business. I usually don't agree with firing people over the phone, but in this case, the girlfriend made it necessary, and OP gave her brother too much leeway and power over her. She should have nipped that stuff in the bud when he started acting like the overlord of nothing. Not the jerk. Firing over the phone isn't fun, but it's not significantly different than firing in person. This isn't a breakup. You don't deserve a face-to-face chat. Not even every relationship requires that. How you did it doesn't matter. They're just mad you did it at all. Your brother is being a jerk. Your former employee is being a jerk. You're not a charity, you're a business owner. They crossed the line into treacherous grounds when they started dating, and then crossed the line repeatedly by him injecting himself into employment matters and her trying to take advantage of you because she thought she had an in. Frankly, this was doomed to end badly no matter what the moment they hooked up. You must call if you are sick. No exceptions. Our department management, in their infinite wisdom, introduced a new rule that if you were sick, you had to call and speak to your TL at least 3 hours before your shift started. No exceptions, ever. Such was their intelligence, they announced this new, super well thought out rule in one of their email blasts containing so much dribble that no one ever actually read them. They were akin to internal spam, and we joked among ourselves that if the company's spam filters were any good, like our marketing team spins them to be, they'd get blocked. I'll admit, ignorance is no excuse, but I was definitely one of those people who ignored these emails, so I had no idea about the rule until a few days later when I had woken up feeling unwell. Now, my shifts that week started at 6 a.m., which meant I usually woke around 4:30 a.m. So once I knew I was too unwell, I sent a "sorry, but I'm unwell today, etc." email to my TL. I should mention here that prior to this new rule, an email was perfectly okay, though there was never a firm rule about a method, just as long as it was a reasonable notice. On the few occasions I'd had to call off sick before, never for a 6 a.m. start, I'd always made a phone call, an exception from previous jobs which I've always carried with me. This one time though, I figured, hey, it's 4:30 a.m. An email would be better received by my TL than waking up at stupid o'clock. Nope, wrong. Turns out my 4:30 a.m. email wasn't good enough, and I got hauled into a meeting with HR and my TL when I was back at work the next day. Of course, I accepted that I didn't read the email with the new rule. My bad. But when I tried to put forward my point about the unreasonable time to call, I was told that it was absolutely no excuse, that I should have been more responsible and called on time, that I was not being asked for my opinion on rules or policies, and that I had to follow them to the letter or else I'd face a formal warning, etc. They weren't going to budge, and I wasn't going to make this my hill to die on, so I let them have their moment and afterwards went back to my desk. I joked with a few colleagues that I would just set an extra alarm for 2:50 a.m. from then on, just in case, but I figured I would really play HR's game if that's what they wanted. I figured if I felt sick, I'd call by 3 a.m., else I'd go back to sleep and wake up at my usual time. Stupid, yes, but that's the rules. A few days later, I woke up to my first alarm feeling unwell again and knew I wasn't going to be fit for work come my scheduled start at 6 a.m. I certainly wouldn't admit to being happy and certainly wasn't uncontrollably smiling as I picked up my phone, called up my TL, and waited for an answer. Didn't get her the first time, surprise, surprise, so I figured I'd call again, just to be sure. This time I got lucky and heard a groggy, "Hello?" on the other end. I gave the formalities, told her I was off sick again, and hung up. I could tell she was positively thrilled to be woken up so early, but hey, it's what they wanted. The next day I was fine and was back at work without drama, but the next day a stomach bug hit the office and my entire team, TL included, all rostered on for 6 a.m. starts that week, ended up leaving early. I'm sure you can paint the rest of this picture. Cue 2 days of 3 a.m. phone calls from every one of the 10 people in my team. Cue my TL getting more upset with each one. Cue HR adding a small bit to the next week's usual dribble mail. I was sure to read this one, not rescinding the rule, but instead patting themselves on the back for coming up with the addition of sending a short email to your TL is now also a suitable form of advising illness. Such intelligence. I worked there for another 4 months before moving on to much greener pastures and was sick only a few more occasions during that period, all of which were for 6 a.m. starts and all of which I was sure to ring at 3 a.m. Hey, that's what the rule said. You continued to call your TL after being informed an email is acceptable? Good. That 3-hour notification is important. You never know when an email will be read. Truly better to call and know your TL is well informed. OP. That's what I figured. And if I had to be awake at 3 a.m., then I don't see why she didn't have to be as well. She was paid more than me after all. In fairness, once I started the 3 a.m. wake-up routine, I liked it because I started going to the gym before work. Don't tell her that though. Karen keeps stealing my food, so I installed a camera. I, female 20, live in a shared house with 3 other girls. I will call them Sarah, Kate, and Zoe. Kate is friends with Zoe. The rest of us aren't really friends. Whilst I'm on okay terms with Sarah and Zoe, I've never really liked Kate. We have a shared fridge where we have a shelf for each of our stuff. I have noticed that my food and milk constantly go missing. I see multiple times a week that a large portion of my food and milk is gone. It's unbelievably frustrating and also very time-consuming and expensive having to buy and cook new food. I always believed it was Kate because 1. She is awake late in the night, 1 to 4 a.m. I'm asleep then, and I tend to notice my stuff missing in the morning. 2. I've asked all of them about it. Sarah and Zoe both deny taking my stuff, but Kate gets all defensive and says I shouldn't accuse her when I have no proof. I was complaining about it to my friend, and he said he was in a similar situation and he got a fridge camera. I thought this was a great idea. I got one, placed it discreetly inside the fridge, and decided to wait a week. Sure enough, it was Kate, raiding my food daily. I confronted her about it because now I had proof. I showed her the footage, told her to never do it again, and that she should repay me for what she took. She completely lost it. She said, how dare I put a camera in the shared kitchen without asking the others first, and how it's so invasive to record others in their own home. I explained the camera only recorded the inside of the fridge, not the whole kitchen, but she didn't care, and has since said she'll never be able to feel safe in her own home again. Zoe has sided with her, and they're both calling me a jerk and saying I should have asked everyone first, even though this would have defeated the whole purpose. I said none of this would have happened if Kate hadn't been stealing my food and lying about it. Sarah has taken my side, so it's pretty tense in the house at the moment. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Kate, how dare you procure evidence of my stealing to back off your charges? This is an outrage. Do not apologize. You should insist to the other roommates that Kate should apologize and pay you back or move out. More than do not apologize. Don't even engage. If they bring up the camera, ask, why were you stealing from me? When will you be paying me back for stealing from me? If they say they don't feel safe, ask, why were you stealing from me? When will you be paying me back from stealing from me? If her friend comes at you, ask her, why was she stealing from me? Don't even begin to address the camera. Don't respond to any complaints about it directly. Keep emphasizing to everyone who lives there that this is about theft and nothing else. OP, I appreciate this advice. I do feel like during this whole saga, Kate's original wrongdoings, the theft, have been swept under the rug. For the record, Kate has hardly mentioned the theft at all, hasn't apologized, and when I asked her to pay me back, said she's not paying me anything. Zoe hasn't mentioned it either, and Sarah is staying out of it, although she said she agrees with me. I think it's a good idea to reshift the focus back to the original issue. Thanks. I'm glad it helps. It isn't surprising to me that Kate would be trying to focus the blame on you. She stole from you, lied about it, and was caught red-handed. Her only recourse to avoid the truth is to try and control the narrative and push the blame onto you for something else. Important not to let that happen. Well, who do you agree with? OP or her roommate? Please let us know. I would have put something special in my food to teach her a lesson, and I'm not talking about laxatives. Brother crashed my car, gets a night in jail he won't forget. I, 21, male, have an older brother, Dave, fake name, that has always been a jerk to me. There's only a 1-year gap between us, but he liked to fight when we were kids, and he always acted like anything that was mine was also his. He was also somewhat the golden child, which made me miserable. So, no surprise, I moved out at 18. My uncle is a now retired police officer, and he took me in after I left home. He even hooked me up with a decommissioned Crown Vic. I absolutely love that car. I don't know why, but Dave hated the fact I had that car. He drove 3 beater cars into the ground while my Crown Vic kept chugging along. Well, after his 3rd car finally ended when he drove it into a pole, he asked to borrow my car. I had a bad feeling and said I wasn't going to do that. He called me entitled and said he needed a car to get to work. I told him to take the bus because I know how he drives and my Crown Vic was off limits. My parents called me after that and told me to just lend him my car. I said I won't no matter what they say. I rely on that car and I need it as well since it's my personal transportation. Dave wasn't the only one in the world with a job he needed to get to. My uncle congratulated me for standing up to them and gave me a high five. A few days later, when I got off work, the car wasn't where I parked it. I called my brother's cell, but he didn't pick up. Then I called my parents and asked them if he took my car. They denied it. So I said I was going to call the cops, and then they admitted he had borrowed it because he needed it. I told them he better bring it back right now or I'll have the police looking for him. They called me a jerk and then phoned Dave to bring my car back. He showed back up in the parking lot in my car 20 minutes later. I demanded to know how he stole my car, and he held up a set of police Crown Vic keys he had bought online. Some were made universal. I told him if he ever stole my car again, I'd have him arrested. Then he had the audacity to ask for a ride home. I told him he made me wait in the December cold after stealing my car so he could walk. He called me a jerk before I drove away. After that, my uncle installed a tracking device in the car. When Christmas Day came, I was celebrating with family like every year. The roads were cold and icy, so I had to be very careful while driving. By now, you're probably clued in on the title. Yeah, Dave borrowed my car again during the Christmas party. Apparently, he decided he was gonna go pick up a friend and figured I wouldn't notice. But I did when I looked out the front window and saw my car was missing. I pulled up the tracking app and saw he was a few miles away, then called his cell to yell at him. Everyone in the party saw this and asked what was going on. I said Dave stole my car again, and my uncle confirmed it wasn't the first time. Dave told me over the phone to buzz off and he'd be back soon. I said he better not have been drinking, but he just hung up on me. Well, while I was watching the tracker app, the dot stopped and didn't move for a while. Soon we got a panicked call from Dave asking for help. He had crashed the car because he couldn't handle the icy roads and he wasn't used to a rear-wheel drive vehicle. So we piled in my parents' minivan and followed the tracker. We found Dave by the road and my Crown Vic nose deep in a snow-filled ditch. My uncle was furious as it was formerly a car of his department, and I was mad as heck at Dave for stealing my car again. My parents wanted me to let it go, but I said enough was enough and was gonna call the police. Dave begged me not to because he really had been drinking before he set off and would get a DUI. I said he was gonna pay me back for my car then, or I'd sue him. Well, as luck would have it, police were already aware of the accident and were driving in to check on the scene. Someone else had called them, I guess. My parents tried to say that I was the one driving the car and they were just there to help me. I said that wasn't true and my uncle backed me up. In fact, one of the cops that was there recognized my uncle and they had a chat. Then they went to Dave and asked to see his license, which I then found out was suspended after he had crashed his previous car. Then they breath tested him. He wound up with cuffs slapped on his wrists while my mother was crying and begging the police not to take him away. But the officer just said that she and my dad could get arrested too for lying to police. That shut my parents up, and we got back in the minivan. The Christmas party was ended early, and my parents drove me and my uncle home since he rode with me. They didn't say much to either of us the whole drive and just sped away as soon as we were out of their van. They nearly slipped off the road themselves doing that. My brother was let out of jail the next day, and he looked so scared that he was practically crying. The cops there had scared him a bit while talking about prison and the crap they had seen go on there. That's when my uncle started cracking up and revealed to us that his friends in the department never filed the DUI and just the charge for the suspended license, which was about a $600 fee. My uncle said he just wanted to teach Dave a lesson, and this would be the one and only time he'd ever get his help. Dave then apologized to me and said he'd pay me to have my Crown Vic fixed and would never touch it again. When it got pulled out of the ditch, the front end damage was actually minor. It needs a new front bumper, a headlight, and a grille. The damage was just superficial, thankfully. My parents have pretty much glossed over the whole incident and act like it didn't happen. Dave gave me the extra Crown Vic keys he had bought online and said this had taught him a lesson he won't soon forget. Your parents are enabling jerks, and your brother is the golden child that can't possibly do anything wrong. I'm glad he got a reality check, but your parents are a lost cause by now. Uncle sounds great. Am I the jerk for calling the police on my fiancé? My fiancé, 28 male, and I, 30 female, have been together for 3 years. I used to live close to work and used public transportation, but after I moved into his house, which is hours away from work, I bought myself a car since I'm a nurse, and also since there aren't any hospitals close to where we live that I could transfer to. My fiancé's car hadn't been working for close to 2 months now. It requires so much money to get it fixed, and he refused my financial help when I offered it. Instead, he would ask to use my car every now and then, And I agreed, as long as it's when I'm not working, and also since he only uses it for trips to the supermarket, etc. On New Year's Eve, he told me he wanted to use my car to go hang out with his friends and celebrate, but I declined because I had to cover a night shift and needed my car to travel to work. He insisted and even suggested I take the night off or swap shifts with another nurse, but I couldn't do that last minute. I thought he dropped it then, but when I went into the shower and got out, I couldn't find him nor my car. I freaked out and started calling for half an hour, but he didn't answer me. I tried again until one of his friends picked up. I demanded he give the phone to my fiancé, but he said they were out and confirmed he took my car and told me that my fiancé said that it's better that I skip my shift and he'll be back with my car later. I couldn't take it. I felt so enraged. I had my fiancé on the phone telling him I did not consent for him to take my car to go hang out with friends and said I'd call the police to get it back if he refused to come back with it. But he didn't take me seriously, so I ended up calling the police, and he and his friends were picked up at the bar where they were hanging out. Then they were taken to the police department. I got my car from there and still went to my shift. My fiancé was let go hours after I left, and he blew up my phone with missed calls and texts about how I was out of my mind to call the police on him and put him in this situation. I did not respond, but when I got off work the next day, we got into an argument, and he said he couldn't believe I'd do this to him. But I told him he made me do this, to which he responded that I was petty and callous because not only did I ruin his New Year's celebration, but all his friends aren't speaking to him after I put them in this situation as well, and he then kept giving me the silent treatment. I did consider this a form of theft, especially since he went behind my back after getting a no from me. But he was shocked that I'd even imply that he was a thief and said what's yours is mine and vice versa, so I shouldn't be using the terms theft and stealing. Not the jerk. Girl, why are you with a man who cannot take care of his own basic needs and insists that you call off work so he can go party? He's using you, and you can do way better. Do not offer financial help to people like this either. He has money to go out with his friends, then he has money for a car. ETA, his friends put themselves in this situation by getting into a stolen car. Do you really think they weren't all sitting around laughing at you before this happened? Please, oh please, tell us you dumped him. He has shown you who he is. Believe him. He has zero respect for you, your needs, or your property. You would experience more of this in the future. Is this how you want to live your life? And his friends are just like him. You deserve so much more. Not the jerk. Yeah, OP's fiancé is a total jerk. Why should she continue her relationship with someone like him? OP, reconsider your relationship. He thinks he's entitled to your car. Respect each other's boundaries. That's the first step in a relationship. He refused to fix his car and instead used OP's car, even after she offered to help him financially. And somehow he thinks his wants should be prioritized? If you want a car whenever, use your own. He tried to convince OP to skip work because he wants to celebrate, and she's a nurse covering night shift. He stole OP's property and blew up on her for simply using her car. He allowed his friends, who, like him, lack any responsibility, to treat OP badly, even though she's the one supporting him in their relationship. OP, dump him. He's tried to manipulate you into skipping work before, and he's stealing your car, knowing well it's gonna make you miss work. He doesn't respect you, your car, your job, or your boundaries. Your property, your rules, you're not the one to blame, but you will be if you stay with this man any longer. You need to respect yourself more than that. You deserve better than a thief who doesn't respect you. I set a glitter trap to catch my mother-in-law trying to snoop. For some weird reason, my mother-in-law really wants to go into our bedroom whenever she comes over. On one occasion, I followed her as she went upstairs. I was going to get something for my kid, as the bedrooms are upstairs, and she walked past the bathroom on the main floor and up the stairs behind it. She didn't hear me, and I caught her walking straight into my room and rifling through bills on my dresser. She denied snooping, even though I just watched her do it, and said she was just going to use our bathroom because she couldn't find the other ones. She walked right past the one on the main floor and another one in the upstairs hallway to go into our bedroom. Since that happened, I installed an exterior doorknob that requires a key on our bedroom door and one on the door to our office/spare bedroom. However, she's still always forgetting where the bathroom is and trying to use the bedroom and office door. This really ticks me off. My husband says that I just get annoyed at this because everything she does drives me crazy, And since we've put locks on the rooms we don't want her in, there isn't really a problem anymore. Well, over the holidays, we had my in-laws over for dinner, and before they came, I was searching for the bedroom keys. We hadn't used them in a while since we only lock the doors when mother-in-law comes over. My husband told me we didn't need to lock the doors since she wouldn't try to get into the rooms, and I insisted that she would because she loves to snoop. We went back and forth and decided to cover the doorknobs in super fine glitter to see if she tried them. I did this once before when husband didn't believe me about the snooping to prove she'd been in the rooms. Last time she ignored the glitter and we didn't say anything about it, but then my husband couldn't deny that she'd tried to snoop. So this time I covered the knobs in glitter and for the office went a touch further and rigged a little folder of glitter over the door to the office before the in-laws came over. French doors, and it was set so if you walked into the room you would get covered in glitter. Husband goes out of his way to show his mom the main floor bathroom when they got here and specifically asks his parents and sister not to go upstairs. There's a baby gate, so the kids can't get upstairs either. Well, guess who had to go to the bathroom and got covered in glitter and had it all over their hands and hair? She completely lost it and started screaming at me. So I yelled back, and now my husband is saying I went too far and I'm the jerk. Mother-in-law also says I'm the jerk, but sister-in-law says I didn't do anything wrong, and mother-in-law deserved it for snooping. Father-in-law is Switzerland. Apparently her car is ruined now too, because it's covered in glitter that she can't get cleaned up. So, am I the jerk? ETA. I can't believe this blew up, and I wanted to say thank you for all the support and the awards. My husband woke up and found this post, and I think the comments have been an eye-opener. We are going to start couples therapy in January, so I think that will be great for us. I will be ordering some cellulose glitter that is biodegradable and safer for future projects. If she comes over again, I will set up a camera, or at least print out some fun fake documents, so if she snoops again, she can at least find something interesting. Not the jerk. Your mother-in-law is an issue, but the fact that your husband refuses to set and enforce boundaries with her is actually the larger issue here. Not the jerk. I had a good laugh at this. I feel like you did a good job leading up to this and were incredibly patient with a boundary-stomping mother-in-law. My petty self doesn't see this as your fault. I mean, sure, we know you set a trap for her, but she had been explicitly told time and time again to not go into those rooms. I mean, how were you really supposed to know she would ruin your nice and neat glitter envelope that you worked so hard on and accidentally left on the top door of the office? The way I see it, she owes you an apology because her recklessness got glitter all over your floors and you now have to refill your special glitter envelope. Not the jerk, but you missed out on the perfect opportunity to spread disinformation. Make up fun documents to leave hidden on your desk about how you're helping the UN with a crisis, or leave out fake letters from heads of state or whoever her favorite famous person is. If she's gonna snoop, have fun with it. OP, this is a great idea. I might do something like this next time, as I'm sure we have several next times in the future before we make and maintain progress with her. Make a folder with a list of nursing homes and put her name on it. Do this, but make it an email with your husband's name attached. Dear Mr. OP, here are the senior homes we were able to find for your mother. Her memory has been declining for quite some time. She can't even remember where the bathroom is. It is of great concern, and we believe a nursing home would be the best course of action. Am I the jerk for refusing to leave my boyfriend's birthday party that I arranged? So for context, I'm 29, female. My boyfriend is 34. He's a doctor. Most of his friends are from work, and they all seem to dislike me and act distant, maybe because I'm not a doctor too. I don't know, and don't care honestly. Since we started dating, they've been asking to hang out without me, and they leave any event I'm at. My boyfriend said they're just taking their time to get used to me. Anyways, his birthday was days ago. I had arranged for the party and paid for everything. It wasn't a surprise since the party was held at the restaurant, and he needed heads up so he could invite his doctor friends. We got there, then his friends started arriving. They came to greet him and started shaking his hand and hugging him while completely ignoring me, though I was there next to him. The tension started when one of them started making remarks about the way I dressed. I sucked it up, but another friend started interrogating me about my degree, then implying I was ignorant for my food choice. What the heck? An hour later, another one asked if I could leave because they wanted to discuss work stuff and it's confidential. I was so shocked, I laughed, asking why he thought it was appropriate to discuss work during a party, and he replied that I had an attitude. An argument ensued, and they had demanded that I leave, but I said absolutely not. My boyfriend finally spoke up after it escalated and asked that I keep the peace and go home, but I refused and reminded him and let his friends know that I had arranged for this party and paid for it, and so they should leave since they're just guests. He pulled me aside and begged I go home after they said if I don't leave, then they will, but I still refused. They left, all of them, and the party was cut short. My boyfriend was upset and started complaining at home that I ruined his birthday the minute I started arguing with his friends. I told him they were being disrespectful to me, but he said I was wrong too, because they said they wanted to discuss medical stuff, and I should have respected that and not made it personal. He's not speaking to me now. I was so hurt I couldn't argue anymore. I felt like I ruined his birthday by making a scene like he said and acting passive-aggressive. Am I the jerk? Edit to say that the reason I refused to leave was because I figured they used the medical stuff discussion as an excuse to get me to leave early. Use that red flag as a cape and fly away. Not the jerk. It's more about jerk friends and boyfriend than being a doctor. I promise you, if OP's boyfriend and his boys were carpenters or bankers, they would have the exact same problem. Except now it's top secret bank information or some crap. It's not about doctors being the superior occupation, it's about them being condescending, disrespectful, and total jerks. Not to mention unethical. If that stuff is so private his girlfriend shouldn't hear it, they're probably committing a HIPAA violation. At a public restaurant, packed with people mind you. OP, girl, run. You know you can do much, much better than someone who uses you to finance their party, then does you over for their jerk friends. Not the jerk. What type of boyfriend asks you to leave the birthday dinner you paid for? Feel the joy that you ruined his stupid birthday and dump him ASAP. Exactly. He's a dimwit if he doesn't see their issues. Letting him speak to her in those manners was all too telling. OP. He says he's aware of the tension between me and his friends, but keeps asking me to be understanding and give them time to get used to me being around. Honestly, I don't even know what that means. Don't know why they see me as if I'm less than. Maybe they're all guys and I'm a girl, so they're not comfortable around me. Maybe because of my job. I didn't care then, but now it's starting to affect my relationship with my boyfriend. Honey, there is no time to get used to you. They either accept you for who you are or not. If they haven't accepted you, then either your dude needs new friends or you need to throw the whole dude out. Forget that garbage of being made to feel less than. If he can't understand that, then he's not the dude for you. You deserve the utmost respect, period. Not the jerk. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. He chose his friends, although you arranged everything. Asking you to leave was incredibly rude, and that is without you hosting. You deserve someone who treats you better. OP. You know, I doubt they wanted to talk about work, but this was rather an excuse they used to get me to leave early. It's incredibly hurtful, seeing they've tried excluding me before, although I've been nothing but civil and respectful with them. My boyfriend's defense for justification for their behavior is that they're just getting used to me, but I doubt it. Well, what do you think? Should OP break up with her boyfriend or not? Please let us know. I'd marry him first, just for a year or two. There'd be a nice fat paycheck at the end of it. Angry man yells at us for sitting in his seats. Staff sides with us and kicks him off the train. I had an incident on the train last week, and it's been bothering me since it happened. I'm wondering whether or not I was the jerk. My family are split, and the whole situation was upsetting and left me pretty shaken. I was traveling down to visit my uncle for New Year who had been struggling with cancer and who couldn't spend time with the whole family during Christmas. I had to take the train with my two kids, ages 4 and 7, and it was a pretty last-minute booking as we weren't sure if me and my kids were going to be able to go. It was about a 7-hour trip all about, with about 4 of that on the train, and my kids were really tired and everything was a bit overwhelming, so I didn't see a problem with sitting in the seats marked as reserved whilst the train was still pretty empty. The journey was quiet. We got to have a bit of rest and have a few drinks and some food, which the kids appreciated since it was such a long day for them. When people came on looking for their seats, I stayed quiet and hoped their seats weren't ours. A man walked up and down the train a few times before starting to ask people if they could move, so he could see the numbers on their headrests, which I thought was pretty rude when he could easily have just sat in another seat for now. The train wasn't that full. Anyway, It turned out that my daughter was sitting in the seat this guy had reserved, and when he aggressively said to her that she was in his seat, she kind of looked a bit startled and looked to me. I had been watching this guy be rude to other passengers, and I was pretty angry that he'd speak to my daughter the same way, rather than look to me and ask politely. She's 7 and is obviously with me. I told her to stay where she was, as there weren't any other seats she could move to that were next to me, and suggested he sit somewhere else as there were more than a few seats dotted around. He goes off muttering, and I assumed he was going to sit down, but he came back a few minutes later with a member of staff and was shouting at this point how we had stolen his seats that he had paid money for, and we weren't even supposed to be on the train. The lady checked our tickets, and I explained to her that we were just tired and didn't think it would have been a problem to sit in the seats whilst the train wasn't full. To his fury, the woman told us not to worry and also suggested that he sit elsewhere. He started shouting about how we had stolen his seat and kids weren't above the law. Long story short, he was told that he needed to get off the train at the next stop as he wasn't welcome on the service. At this point, both of my kids were pretty shaken, and I regretted the whole journey, but wasn't sure what I could even do at this point. Was I the jerk here for creating this situation? Part of me thinks this man was just crazy and was going to cause an argument with somebody, even if it wasn't us, but I'm not sure. You're the jerk. He paid for that seat, and your level of entitlement is staggering. I'm honestly shocked that the staff member sided so blatantly with you. If the train wasn't that full, why would you sit in the reserved spots? I honestly think the staff sided with her because this man had gotten loud. If he hadn't, I think OP would have been made to move. Not that I agree with OP, but so many people forget that they can be right but ruin their chances through anger. This is so true. For all we know, this guy was already having a super bad day, so this may have pushed him over the edge. It's still not right to yell at kids though, but it also has me wondering if that even happened. From the sounds of OP's post, she was really just looking for clout, so maybe she embellished the story by adding that he yelled at her daughter and threw off blame. You're the jerk. You were in stolen seats, saw this guy trying to find his seats, said nothing even though you suspected you were in his seats, then refused to move when he figured it out. You are absolutely the problem. I have 3 kids and might have sat there when it was empty, but seeing him searching for his seat, I would have spoken up right then and asked if we were one of his seats. OP, you're the jerk, a huge one. Am I the jerk for making my friend upset by revealing how long it took for me to lose weight and how I lost it? I recently lost 40 pounds in the last 4 months. I feel like I'm under the healthy category for the first time in my life. A friend whom I haven't seen in over a year had to come to my city for a work-related thing. She asked me if she could stay with me and my husband. I readily agreed. In the past, every time she visited, she usually meets up with me, but prefers to stay in the hotel as that was more comfortable for her. I asked her if everything was okay. She told me that she's been dieting for the past 1 year and that she wants to stay in a place where she will be able to cook and exercise and not a hotel. I excitedly told her that even I had started dieting and exercising. She finally arrived. She was a little shocked at how much weight I had lost. I welcomed her and we got to talking. She told me that she has only lost 5 pounds and it was surprising that I lost so much. I consoled her that everyone was different and she shouldn't be discouraged. She woke up early the next day to go running and to do some cardio. I, on the other hand, slept in. I generally do intermittent fasting and walk up to 30K steps a day. I do not do any exercises other than that. My friend, however, was way more active and I was really proud of her and in awe. However, at night she was kind of mad at me and asked me whether I was having a cheat day. I told her no. She asked if walking was all I did. I told her yes. She asked me how long I've been doing this. I told her 4 months. She blew up at me. She started crying and shouting about how unfair it was that she couldn't lose any significant weight after doing so much for a year while I lost everything so easily. I was kind of shocked, but I told her that she wasn't being fair to herself and that her stamina has improved and weight isn't the only indication of her exercise. But then she kept screaming, and I told her not to yell at me at my home. I told her that she can either stop or she can leave. She left in the end. I didn't speak to her for a couple of days, but she posted a picture of herself. It looked like she started binging on lots of fast food and captioned it, "It doesn't matter what I eat, so I am not going to care anymore." I feel terrible that I have inadvertently stopped her/discouraged her even though I didn't mean to. Am I the jerk here? Is there something I should have done differently? I'm leaving everything I own to my goddaughter instead of my daughter. I, 45 female, divorced my ex-husband when my daughter, Kelly, who's 21 female, was around 12 after I caught him cheating for the second time. Literally everyone was against it, and I knew the in-laws wouldn't like it because they're traditional conservatives who didn't want to deal with a public scandal. But it was hurtful to me that my own family was trying to pressure me to stay in the marriage in order to not lose access to the money and perks my ex had provided. Examples: while we were married, my ex helped my brother get a nice job with a high salary and nice benefits, paid off my sister's credit card debt, and bought my parents really lavish gifts. The first time I caught him cheating, I wanted out back then, but my family convinced me to forgive him and that I owed it to Kelly to fight for her to have the stability of a two-parent household. My daughter was only a few weeks old at the time, and I was in a very vulnerable state at the time, so I agreed and felt stupid when my ex did it again. This time, I wasn't going to be deterred and continued with the divorce. In truth, I wanted to keep Kelly out of this as much as possible, but my in-laws and my own parents turned her against me by painting me as a hypocrite for telling her how important forgiveness is, but that I wasn't willing to forgive Daddy even when he was really sorry. I was distraught. I honestly don't think I would have made it through it if it weren't for my best friend, Tina, who was my rock. In the end, I got a nice settlement and some alimony, but didn't get custody. I tried my hardest to still be in Kelly's life, but by the time she was a teen, she was fully convinced that I was the bad guy and told the courts she didn't want to see me anymore. I was heartbroken, but kept reaching out. During that time, I also managed to go back to school. I was studying accounting and managed to get a high-paying job of my own and have a nice life for myself. The same can't be said for my ex, who was sued by a former employee and fired by his company. Because he was so embarrassed, my ex burned through his savings trying to keep up his lifestyle, which included Kelly's college fund. Suddenly, she wanted contact again, and I won't lie and say that I wasn't hurt at the idea of her only wanting contact was for my money, and agreed to pay for her to go to grad school on the condition that she sign an agreement that she won't contest my will, where I'm leaving most of what I owned to Tina's daughter, Laura, who's 18. The few relatives that I'm still on good terms with think that this will damage any chance at rebuilding a relationship with Kelly and that I should just split everything equally. However, I don't want to have the type of relationship with Kelly that I feel like I have to pay for. Am I the jerk? Edit. 1. I didn't get custody, but I did get visitation, and when Kelly was 14 to 15, she told the courts she didn't want to visit me anymore. 2. My ex came from money and had a good income, which meant he had better lawyers and the aid of my brother and parents during the divorce. 3. Not too long after the divorce, my brother lost his job. I'm not sure what happened, and I never cared to ask. 4. I'm no contact with my brother and very low contact with my parents and sister. 5. Tina is my documented POA should there ever be a situation where I can't make legal decisions for myself and vice versa. 6. Alimony is not child support, so that's why I was able to get it. Not the jerk. Your daughter has always been against you because of your family, and now the moment when things aren't looking good, she wants contact. Ignore her. And your family basically wanted you to stay because they wanted his money. Not the jerk. I don't understand the entitlement where kids think they are owed what their parents had after they pass. None of what's yours belongs to anyone else unless you give it to them. And if that's a problem with someone, then it shows where they see the true value in a relationship with you. If you want to leave everything to your goddaughter, do it. If that's an issue for your biological daughter, then that should cement what you're already thinking about why she's reached back out to you in the first place. It hurts, and I empathize with that. Just know you aren't obligated to do anything you don't want to in this situation, despite the guilt and judgment you may face. Well, what do you think? Should OP leave anything for her biological daughter or just her goddaughter? Please let us know. I'd leave biological daughter $1 in my will. That way she can't try to fight for anything else. I was told to do what an executive told me in a precast concrete plant. Some background first. I worked for a precast concrete company as a job in between high school and college. The job sucked, but it paid well. We made a lot of the massive storm culverts and tunnel pieces that are dropped in place during construction instead of being made where they are. To put this in perspective, our largest casting form could handle pieces 40 feet by 30 feet. Absolutely massive pieces. After a few weeks of working for this company, I was trained to run the industrial concrete mixer and did this every day. This mixer was 3 stories tall, mixed up to 4.5 cubic yards of concrete at a time, and was the most beat-up machine in the entire plant, which was saying something. It ran 6 days a week, 2 shifts a day, and was never maintained because the company couldn't get techs to come out on Sunday, its only day not running, and didn't want to lose a work shift to get it maintained. The only good thing about it was that all the materials were weighed and fed in automatically. All it took was a button to start the process. The most common problem was the bottom release door not sealing correctly. It would be just barely cracked, allowing all the water to run out of it, resulting in an unusable chunky mess that would need to be dumped in a scrap hole instead of being used. If this happened, the mess needed to be dumped out of the mixer quickly before it could partially harden inside the mixer. This only happened once that I was there, and it took an entire shift to chisel the stuff out. We put a mark in the sliding door to show where it should be versus where it would be when it didn't seal. The process worked like this. A cage of rebar and anchor points was constructed on a base around a core and a form bolted around it. The QA guy signed off, and the form was then filled with concrete and left to cure. The curing time largely depends on the ambient temperature. The hotter it is, the faster it cures, and vice versa. Once the piece has cured enough to be lifted, the form is stripped and the piece lifted by crane off the core. Repeat until you have as many pieces ordered. Another thing to note is hard hat colors. They were color-coded according to your role. Blue are plant supervisors, green QA, red the foreman, etc. For the normal workers, there was a choice of 2 colors. Yellow for people who don't know what they're doing, typically new or dumb people, and gray for those that do. This was about 5 months into my time with them, and I had just got a gray one maybe 2 months before. Onto the story. Our plant was starting to produce pieces at a substantially slower rate than the other plant owned by the company. We were working 10 to 12-hour days every day to try and make up the difference. Typically, multiple pieces were made per form, per day 2 to 4. We were only managing 1 and maybe 2 per form per day. To figure out the reason for this, the owner's plan was to send an executive from the main office to observe and time every section of the process in our plant. This in itself was silly. Remember how I said the speed concrete cures is based on temperature? Our plant was in an unheated warehouse in a state bordering Canada, in the winter. The other plant was in Florida. Can you guess why production was a bit slower in our plant? In any case, during the shift meeting before the executive got there, our foreman's exact words were, "Do what he tells you. Otherwise, stay the heck away from him." Wonderful. The shift proceeds as normal. Building cages and forms get bolted. Maybe 6 hours into the shift, I climb up on top of the mixer to the platform and I'm greeted by the executive in the shiniest white hard hat I've ever seen, and office attire, complete with black dress shoes, in a concrete plant. He looked bored out of his mind. He asked me something to the effect of if I was looking forwards to the end of the shift in 2 hours. I told him that with no problems, we might get to leave in 4 hours. He got the most defeated look on his face and mumbled something that I didn't catch. I went through the pre-checks on the mixer and found the bottom door was once again not closing properly. I yelled down to the plant supervisor that the door wasn't sealing again and that the machine would be down until I got it to seal, normally by chipping the concrete left by the previous shift after using the mixer away from the opening. The plant supervisor yelled back a few choice words directed at the mixer and stormed into his office. The executive had a look and said he thought the door looked fine. I told him that it did this a lot and that it wasn't sealed, pointed out the mark to him, and went to get the tool I bribed a fabricator with energy drinks to make me to chip away the concrete. A braking bar welded onto a rebar shaft that I kept under the mixer itself. No more hunting down an air gun and going through confined space lock and tagouts. Just stand on top and poke at the concrete until the door moves freely. Upon coming back with the tool, the executive told me that the seal was fine and to run it. I pointed out the same things about the door not sealing regularly. I asked if they were sure. They replied in the affirmative. I started up the mixer. The mixer regularly threw a bunch of silica up into the air. With the water draining out the bottom, this was going to be extra dusty. I offered them an extra mask that I had, and they replied that they would be fine. Well, it's not my lungs. At the same time, I noticed the plant's heavy equipment guy walking into the building and got his attention and made the hand gesture for the front loader. I got a "what the heck" look from them, and they mouthed, "Why?" I pointed down at the mixer, repeated the gesture, and they threw their hands up and they turned around. The load went into the mixer. Water started draining out the bottom. Dust goes everywhere. Go figure. The plant supervisor comes out of his office, I assume after seeing the giant cloud on the cameras, runs over and says something like, OP, what the heck are you doing? The mixer is quite loud with concrete in it. I got the general gist though. I just pointed to the executive, who was now covered in dust and staring at the water pouring out of the bottom of the mixer. Never said a word. The plant supervisor's head swiveled and he just crooked a finger at the executive. The executive climbed down. They exited the building with the plant supervisor leading. The fallout. The front loader was able to get the mixer before the mess was able to partially cure inside it, so the cleanup was as easy as dumping it into the bucket and then dumping that in the scrap hole and spraying out the mixer. We continued the shift after I chipped the concrete away from the door and got it closing properly again. Not too much time wasted, maybe an hour. The foreman asked what happened later in the shift and didn't stop laughing for the rest of it. The plant supervisor talked to me afterwards, asked what happened, and told me he didn't blame me for that dumb jerk's mistake since he had said to do what the executive said. I never saw the executive again, and the plant supervisor never said what happened in the parking lot. I can only assume that the most this produced was angry phone calls and a lot of concrete wasted. I left about 3 months later, but I never heard anything else about slow production times from the main office. The lack of maintenance sounds very familiar to me. I drive ready-mix trucks. If we can keep it running until the next holiday, all is good. We have 2 slots of 2 weeks per year that the plant closes, so maintenance to the plant and trucks happens then or until it fails catastrophically and we're shut down by it. Am I the jerk for using my husband's savings to repurchase the bike that he took from our daughter? My daughter received a bike from her uncle, my brother, on her 11th birthday. She was over the moon and excited to use it because it was on her wish list for so long. Days ago, I discovered that my husband reached out to my brother to ask for the receipt for the bike and returned it to the store and kept the money for himself while my daughter was at school. The bike was at home. My daughter and I got home and she started crying after noticing the bike was gone. My husband was home at the time. He told me he returned the bike and got money in return to spend on something useful for us since the bike was just there as a distraction and there was no need for it now since we're in the dead of winter. I was aggravated and lost it on him, saying it wasn't his, didn't come from him, and he didn't pay for it, so he had no right to touch it, especially knowing our daughter's been wanting it for a long time and my brother was decent enough to buy it for her despite barely having money to get himself by. I told him what he did was theft and insisted he hand over the money to me so I could repurchase it, but he said he spent it on stuff for the house and doesn't have any money left now. But I knew about the money he was stashing away in the bedroom that he forbade me from touching, and I took some of it and went out to repurchase the bike while he was out the next day. He found out and lashed out at me, saying I never should have touched the money he was saving for himself, which isn't much, but I lashed right back that I had to so I could repurchase the bike he took from our daughter. He explained that he didn't keep the money for himself and instead spent it for necessities for our home, but he was at fault for taking the bike in the first place and he was responsible for getting it back. He yelled at me for almost 10 minutes, then stormed outside and started smoking. My daughter asked why her dad was upset and that she no longer wants the bike if dad doesn't want her to have it, but I assured her that's not the case and told her she shouldn't feel guilty and to just focus on enjoying her bike. My husband hasn't stopped grilling me about how I disrespected and undermined him and managed to make our daughter hate him after making him look like the bad guy. I again said he shouldn't have touched the bike, end of story. He called me thief and juvenile for taking money from his savings and being sneaky about it. Am I the jerk for the way I got the bike back? Not the jerk, but you know you've got much bigger problems than the bike and this particular money incident. OP, I do, and the money he's saving was supposed to be for emergencies according to him, but he hasn't needed or used it in such emergencies. I'm sorry, but there is definitely something going on with him financially. He has a stash of money for emergencies that you're not allowed to touch, then sells his daughter's birthday present for non-specific stuff for the house with no receipts and no further explanation, yet the upstairs stash was untouched? What could possibly be so urgent that you would sell your daughter's birthday present but not use your emergency fund? Best case scenario, he's got a secret debt issue, gambling problem. Not the jerk. The bit about your kid saying they no longer wanted the bike broke my heart. Your husband is so poor he has to steal from your kids, yet he somehow has enough money to smoke? Not the jerk, but you're married to a huge one. OP, to be fair, we're struggling financially. I won't deny that, but since he's the breadwinner, he tells me it's up to him how he spends the rest of his salary after already providing for us. Yeah, Except that he didn't provide for you. He stole from an 11-year-old instead of using his own money to support his family. With all the respect your husband deserves, which I'm sorry, but it's none in this situation, forget him. Not the jerk. But like others, I'm also wondering why you're with this man. He seems to only care about himself and not even a little bit about you or your daughter. Are you with him for your daughter? Because trust me, she doesn't need that kind of drama in her life. It's better to not have a dad than a dad that steals from you for his own fun. Am I the jerk for giving my older daughter's room to my stepdaughter? My new wife and I have our own modern-day Brady Bunch. I have 4 kids of my own and she had 3. My kids are much older than hers, with my 2 oldest having already moved out. Before she moved in, and even before we got married, I promised her and her kids a lot of things. One of those being a much better home to live in. I promised her kids they would each get their own rooms, something they've never had before. The time came for them to move in a couple months back, and I came to realize I actually needed to make the space. My 2 kids with me still were willing to bunk up for at least 1 more year. My daughter here is a senior, so she won't be home much longer. And all I needed to do was get the clearance to give my oldest kids' rooms to my stepkids who actually need the space. I called my older son. He answered and he was okay with me cleaning out the room. My oldest daughter, however, was much more trouble. I called her at least 3 times throughout that day with no answer. I knew she was doing this all on purpose. Not to delve too much into the details, but her and my wife don't get along. By proxy, she's turned on me. At a certain point, I was getting too anxious at the idea of disappointing my new stepkids, so I just went ahead and cleared both rooms for the kids, giving my older daughter's room to one of my wife's girls. We went through a period of being a happy new little family. We went by the holidays. My older daughter did not come home for Christmas. She chose to spend time with her boyfriend of 5 months over us, smoothly. When come the new year, my older daughter was asking for something from her old room. I've talked to her a little bit between the intertwining months, but I admittedly didn't bring up the room thing because by the time I reached her, it didn't seem important. So this was the first time I told her what happened to her old room and how I honestly don't have anything from it anymore. The girl proceeded to scream and insult me. I told her how I tried to reach out to her during the transition and how technically, since she's been at school, it isn't her space anymore. That's when she threw insults at my wife, which was crossing a major line from my point of view. Essentially, it pushed me too far as well. I told her regardless of how she feels about my wife and her family, she's been no better, because for me, she's just been a miserable brat ever since my wife came into our lives. That was the end of it, and it hurt me to say that. I want to understand her issue, but I also have to take care of my new kids, so I can't always put her or her siblings first anymore. I have no one else willing to talk to me about things, and still, knowing how she used to be and knowing what I said was wrong, I can see how I handled the situation might have been too irresponsible. Edit. Okay, I see where this is going. However, one thing I won't be able to take is if you pepper your responses with blatant insults against my wife. As you can tell, I'm rather sensitive towards negativity against her. I already have to deal with that with my kids. I will not respond to allegations against my wife, insults against her, speculation on her age, intentions, or character, because none of that matters when talking about the situation with me and my daughter. The reason why my daughter doesn't like my wife is unimportant and personal. Only the fact that they dislike each other is worth noting for context on why things blew up like this. You're the jerk. New kids don't trump old kids. Transitions need to be managed. Why exactly are you promising your stepkids things that take away from your current kids? What is wrong with you? This. OP said they were now a happy new little family. Like, forget the older kids, am I right? You're the jerk. I don't know how you can more clearly tell your daughter to buzz off better than by getting rid of all of her stuff and giving her room away. Yeah, I was honestly on board with OP until they mentioned that they got rid of their daughter's stuff. I can absolutely understand not wanting a bedroom to go empty after their kid has moved out, but you don't just toss their belongings. My mother did the same to me, and I still haven't completely forgiven her. I wasn't living at home, I was living in the dorms. I was absolutely fine with the idea of her packing up my things, but throwing things away without consulting the owner first is cruel. One item for me was a hat box I dubbed the ex-boyfriend box. I had letters from my high school sweethearts, dried and pressed flowers from some of my first school dances, and small tokens from some of my ex-boyfriends. I actually found out she tossed the box when I called her to ask her to look in the box for me. One of my ex-boyfriends had given me his class ring and had insisted I keep it even after we broke up. He passed away our sophomore year. I wanted to give the ring to his mother so she could remember him with it. I was absolutely devastated to find out the box had been tossed out. OP thinks they're grand and compare themselves to the Brady Bunch, but this is not a sitcom where everything ends well before the credits. You're the jerk. Why did you not at least store her stuff? Did you only try to reach out to her for one day? Also, the way you write about being a happy new family absolutely sounds like you replaced your kids. Even though they're older, they're still your kids and should be first. It sounds like you did everything possibly wrong to have your daughter feel like she's a part of your family, not the least of which was making promises you couldn't keep and lying. I don't blame her or your other kids for inevitably going no contact with you in the future. But hey, you have a shiny new family. ETA, having the stepdaughter in the room is one thing, but the fact that he literally threw away everything in her former room on top of that absolutely sounds like he erased one daughter from his life to replace her with his younger stepdaughter. Am I the jerk for telling a teenager that a wedding is significantly more important than her birthday and she needs to grow up? I invited my soon-to-be mother-in-law wedding dress shopping as an olive branch because we don't have the best relationship. She accepted, but asked if she could bring her boyfriend's 15-year-old daughter, Emily, because Emily loves fashion. Honestly, I think it was more of mother-in-law has some anxiety around my family and wanted an ally, so I said yes. Emily is okay, but ridiculously spoiled. Her divorced parents are in competition for her love, and both have some serious cash to throw around. Emily is having a sweet 16 the same month I'm having my wedding, and she's been talking about it nonstop, picking out the car she wants, making plans for the actual day. Her birthday is a Wednesday, but the party is a Saturday, so she still expects something special on her birthday. She will be going to Disney with her boyfriend, her dad, and mother-in-law. She's already let her mother know that since her birthday falls on his custody time, her mom can make it up to her, so she's having 3 birthdays. I internally roll my eyes a little, but it isn't my business. We had a nice day planned of lunch and wedding dress shopping. It started off okay, but Emily demanded a sip of mother-in-law's champagne, and I was a bit worried about getting kicked out because it's a liability. But mother-in-law told me to chill, and her boyfriend has been allowing this since she was 12. The issue began when Emily was walking around the boutique and found a dress she loved for her party. Mother-in-law told her to try it on, which kind of bothered me because it wasn't Emily's event. My mom told mother-in-law that it was bad etiquette, and mother-in-law seemed surprised. I will give mother-in-law the benefit of the doubt that she didn't know because she is pretty socially oblivious. Emily came out and heard the conversation and told mother-in-law she didn't do anything wrong and we were being Zillas. I nicely asked Emily to stay out of the adult conversation, and Emily told mother-in-law that it isn't even her fault her relationship with her son is strained because we are so nitpicky and she was literally just trying on a dress. I snapped at Emily that she has no idea what she's talking about, and maybe when she's older she'll have a clue, but a wedding is way more important than some birthday party. I said birthdays come every year, and it really isn't that special. Emily told me to chill, and why can't I share? And all the dresses I tried on were basic. Finally, mother-in-law told Emily they were leaving and stormed out after paying for the dress. Mother-in-law's boyfriend is upset and said I'm a drama queen. I shouldn't be fighting with his kid, and I'm so mean to mother-in-law. You're the jerk, because here's the thing. Her birthday is more important to her than your wedding. Why are you arguing with a kid because they're excited about their birthday compared to your wedding when it sounds like she barely even knows you? Maybe you should grow up a little. Yeah, 15-year-olds are excited about turning 16. It's a big deal to them, even if it isn't to adult OP. Why would she be as enthused about the wedding of someone she doesn't know very well? Why does OP care this much? What's interesting is OP is mad that Emily isn't centering all her excitement on a wedding between 2 people she doesn't seem to know very well, but is irrationally annoyed that Emily is a kid very excited for her sweet 16, despite Emily not asking OP to share in her excitement. You're the jerk. Fighting with a kid because you lost a bit of spotlight and telling her that her sweet 16 isn't important? Maybe birthdays aren't important to you, but your childhood ones can be. But that's not the point. Her birthday has nothing to do with your wedding, and there's no need to compare. A simple, we're here to wedding dress shop and we want to focus on that experience. She's welcome to look at dresses while she's here, but if you could save trying on for another occasion, that would be appreciated, would have sufficed. I honestly don't see why Emily can't also try a dress on at the same time. I don't think it's inappropriate at all. OP doesn't have the monopoly of the shop. OP's reaction is so childish. Just because you personally don't find it inappropriate doesn't mean that it's generally accepted. Most people would realize that going wedding dress shopping for the bride is about just that, wedding dress shopping for the bride. You're the jerk. All that stuff about the details of her party and her being spoiled is completely irrelevant, and it's clear that you just added it to justify your attitude towards her. The situation in question is, you were at your bridal gown appointment. Your soon-to-be mother-in-law dragged a 15-year-old girl with her to basically act as an emotional support animal. She got bored watching her dad's, girlfriend's, son's fiancé try on wedding dresses and decided to try on a dress for her upcoming Sweet 16. You got upset, berated your soon-to-be mother-in-law about her boyfriend's daughter trying on a dress, told a 15-year-old to butt out because the grown-ups are talking, and told her that her birthday party is irrelevant and your wedding actually matters. Of course her birthday matters to her. Why the heck would the wedding of her dad's girlfriend's son matter to a 15-year-old? No less, watching said son's fiancé try on wedding dresses. Not the jerk. They were ruining your dress experience, and being oblivious isn't a good excuse. Being 16 is kind of a good excuse for being a jerk, but that's why mother-in-law shouldn't have brought her if she couldn't behave appropriately. I don't blame the kid for not knowing that the bridal dress shopping experience should be about the bride, but it is weird to me that mother-in-law wasn't like, you can try it on when we're done with OP's fitting, or we will come back for it later. It's not a trip to the mall or something. They were shopping for a bridal gown. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for the way she acted or not? Please let us know. Every day I thank the heavens that I've never had to go to a bridal shower dressing shop thing. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend that she should have her imaginary boyfriend cook her dinner? My girlfriend loves to read, and she gets really involved with the books she's reading, and she usually rants and raves about them. It was never a problem, but about 3 months ago, she started to read a lot of romance novels. This happens at least twice a week. She started to project things onto me. For instance, if she's mad at someone in the book, she gets mad at me. Some days, she will tell me not to speak to her and criticize me, and I would be wondering what I did wrong and try to talk to her, and she will just leave the room. The next day, she will sheepishly tell me that she had been mad about something that happened in the book. She also sometimes gets mad at me and points out something really romantic the lead may have done for the woman, and she gets upset at me for not being that romantic. This is easier to deal with, as I just have to be romantic and smooth talk her a bit, which I love to do anyway. Having to figure if it's a real issue or just her being angry about a book is hard, and she gets even more annoyed if I ask her if it's about the book. I've been just ignoring it because I never thought it would be a huge issue. I had a horrible day at work, and I was pretty crushed and exhausted. I greeted her, and she ignored me, and I asked if she was actually mad at me or if she was sulking about a book. She told me to buzz off. I wanted to tell her about how bad it had been, but I really couldn't after she dismissed me like that. I decided to just rest and play games, as I was really tired and didn't want to cook. I ordered food for us, and I was gaming when she asked me if I was making dinner, and I told her I was too tired to cook and had ordered food. She loves to eat home-cooked food and is not a fan of ordering out in general, and she called me lazy. I snapped that maybe one of her imaginary boyfriends could cook for her because I was too tired to do it. She refused to eat the food I had delivered, and she went to bed hungry, and I feel like such a jerk right now. I feel terrible that I upset her, and I know that I should have dealt with this maturely and not tried to insult her. Not the jerk. That's super unhealthy of her. She's basically living vicariously through the characters in the book and making it your responsibility to navigate handling her mood swings over it. I love to read, and I've gotten super emotional over characters, but I've never expected real life to mirror fiction or blamed someone else for what happened in the story. That's just taking it too far. Karen girlfriend thinks she's moving in with me. My roommate tells her off, resulting in tears. My girlfriend has been rubbing my roommates wrong. She's been on this zero waste kick, and it's been an issue. She doesn't live with us and is becoming preachy. She's still in student housing until June, when she graduates with a degree in political science. She casually talked about moving in with me several times. I haven't said anything because June is 6 months away, and I thought of getting our place. I live in a big 5-bedroom house. It belongs to one of my roommates, Mindy's grandparents. It has a heated pool, a library, and an indoor conservatory. I lucked out because I met my friend from college. Recently, my girlfriend has been making herself at home like it's her place. She told Mindy, who likes to take baths in the evening, that it's terrible for the environment. She can hear Mindy, who has the rooms above mine, take a bath. This latest fight yesterday came around on dish soap. My girlfriend brought a glass jar and said we all should use this type of soap only. Using soap in a plastic bottle is bad. She also got mad because no one was using the compost bin she brought us for Christmas. She told people in the kitchen, "Things are gonna change when I move in." Mindy was like, "What?" My girlfriend said when she moves in June, she will make sure we are a zero-waste home. Mindy laughed and said, "You are never moving in, ever." My girlfriend starts, "Well, my boyfriend lives here, so I will be here." Mindy points out that her grandparents left her in charge of the home and she will decide who lives here or not. She tells my girlfriend that she overstays her welcome 99% of the time and she only puts up with it because I'm a good tenant. She will not put up with her living here. My girlfriend yelled at me and said, "I thought you settled this. I want to live here." I told her I thought we could get a studio and move in together, just us. At the word studio, my girlfriend got even angrier and said she wanted someplace with a pool and a nice kitchen. She starts on a rant about how everyone is always destroying her dreams. It ends with her crying and going back to her dorm room. Mindy calls my girlfriend a gold digger and says that I need to wise up. Mindy says I should not have let her think she could have moved in here. It wasn't going to happen. Your girlfriend is pressed over dish soap but insists on a home with a pool? As in one of those man-made holes in the ground that uses tons of excess water for no other purpose than leisure and requires a bunch of chemicals to keep natural things like algae from growing? Oh, I get it. Girlfriend only wants to be an environmentalist for the joy of being smug and telling other people what to do. That makes more sense. You're the jerk for letting the conflict get to this point. Mindy should not be responsible for handling this conflict with your girlfriend. You should. Mindy's grandparents own the house and have appointed her a property manager of sorts, so she doesn't have to let anyone live there that she doesn't like. Clearly, she doesn't like your girlfriend. Girlfriend is going to have to accept this, and if she puts up a fight, then you are the one who needs to deal with it, not Mindy or anyone else who lives there. Your girlfriend sounds annoying as heck and definitely hypocritical. Why doesn't she buy a house herself and make that a zero-waste house with a pool and a hot tub? Also, you're the jerk for putting Mindy in that position and not settling this issue earlier. She's going to kick you out if this continues. Nobody wants to be preached to in their own home when someone takes advantage of the amenities and doesn't even pay rent. Everyone sucks here except Mindy. Your girlfriend absolutely sucks. She's making other people uncomfortable in their home. I would like to be a zero waste too. Well, less waste at least. But when you live with other people, you have to persuade, not enforce. You also suck too, though. You could see your girlfriend was making your roommates uncomfortable and you just let it happen. You didn't communicate to your girlfriend your expectations for post-graduation, even though she was making her expectations clear to you. It would seem you were hoping to avoid difficult conversations, but part of being an adult is learning to suck it up and have them. You're the jerk. Your girlfriend also seems very pushy and unkind, but you knew that she had a notion of moving into your fancy place and also that it wouldn't happen. She shouldn't have made assumptions, but it wasn't an especially unreasonable assumption, and you had many opportunities to correct her. When you failed to counter her narrative of your future, you confirmed her assumptions. Sounds like you wanted to let Mindy be the bad guy. Shame on you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. Isn't it amazing what people put up with to be with someone who they think is hot? Let me go? Fine, you'll lose millions. This was around 10 years ago. I've always been very technical-minded and was able to read blueprints, construct complex devices, weld, among other things. I took a high-paying job with a company that made several things for railroads. The job entailed most of my skills I mentioned above. It was a very small department. In fact, there were only 2 to 3 of us, but we got along great and challenged each other, which led to higher production. Sadly, the one other guy in my department left for a better job, which left me by myself. My supervisor was great as well, liked to joke around with me, left me alone to focus on my work, and had my back when I needed him. We actually assembled signal enclosures and mast and ladder houses for railroads. Fast forward to 3 years later, and the owners buy a much bigger location and move the whole company. As you might expect, several departments get shuffled. Yep, my department gets folded into a completely different department that has no clue what I do. At first it was fine, but it starts to go pear-shaped pretty quickly. My new supervisor seemed good at first, but I quickly realized he's a snake in the grass. For example, I had to help the prototype department assemble a new, lighter type of mast and ladder house. So I'm printing out issues and suggesting fixes, etc. New supervisor is not happy. He keeps coming over, huffing, groaning under his breath, standing over my shoulder, etc. He finally interrupts and asks in an angry voice, "How much longer will this take?" I respond, "I have 4 more hours today, and 8 hours every day after that." He looks puzzled, so I explain, "This is my department, this is where I work, these are my responsibilities. So if it takes 2 months, that's how long it takes." Almost as if to get the last word in, he says, "You work where and when I tell you," and storms off. Next day, I'm called into the office, and they force me to sign a letter that states, I now work in my new supervisor's department. Fine by me. I watch from a distance in my new department as all the stock, hardware, parts, orders, etc. of my old department begin to rack up. And since I'm the only one that works in that department, or rather used to work in that department, nobody's doing anything about it. After about 2 weeks, my old department is a disaster, with items being thrown wherever it would fit. Orders had began to miss deadlines, and higher-ups wanted answers. Sure enough, I get called into the office where the new supervisor blames me for everything, but wouldn't let me get a word in. Of course, they let me go without any reason or paperwork. The look of relief on my new ex-supervisor's face when I walk out was priceless. He had no clue what was coming. I leave with a smile plastered to my face, because I knew something they didn't. I was the only one that knew how to build the mast and ladder structures. I relaxed at home for around 2 weeks because I knew I would be getting a call from them. I ignore the first dozen calls. Then I answer, "Can you come back and build, train new hires, etc. for your department?" "Sure," I say, "for $20,000. Now, that may seem like a lot, but it wasn't. They made millions from these, so there really was only one option. Pay me $20,000 or lose millions. Long story short, they went back and forth with me, but finally conceded. I received $20,000 for 2 days' work, and they were helpless. The cherry on top was my new ex-supervisor was fired for being a nitwit and costing the company $20,000. Edit. Wow, this popped off. Thanks for all the awards. Didn't expect that. Sorry it was long. Some further information. I didn't want to work for them again. It potentially would have been a situation. They used my knowledge and training of the new staff only to terminate me for some made-up reason, which I understand. Nobody wants a disgruntled employee. Why $20,000? I bounced around on numerous figures, but when it came time to say a number over the phone, $20,000 was the number that came out. No real thought. Could I have gotten more? Yes, I think so, but it paid my bills, spent some, little vacation, and gave me time to be picky about my next job. Did I get another job? Yes. As to your questions, could I train new 2 workers in 2 days? Yes. Did I do it well? No. The company wanted it as cheap as possible, so they grabbed 2 new guys from a different department with 0 experience. The best I could do was show them the general process given their limited experience and my limited time. As far as getting all the work up to date, in my department, the expected production was 2 per day. My personal record in 1 day was 18 before I stopped. Previous good supervisor told me to stop. What the heck are you going to do after you finish a month's worth of work in a day? You'll be sitting around with nothing to do, or you'll be going home early. The first month I was there, I set up a series of jigs that allowed fast, repeatable results. That, coupled with years of doing it, meant I could build them in my sleep. Is my boyfriend using me for money? My 21 female boyfriend, 20 male, asks me pretty much daily to buy him things. Normally smaller things like cigs or disposable vapes or caffeine at the gas station, but it really adds up. I know it doesn't seem like much, but it's $500 a month added up. I know you may be wondering, why am I just giving him this money? I swear I'm not. I've tried to say no, but I literally feel like I can't say no to him successfully. And what I mean by this is, he'll say things like, "My day is ruined," or "Can't you just be nice this one time?" And it makes me feel really awful about myself if I try to say no. One time when I didn't want to buy him something, he told me I didn't give a hoot about him and kept spamming me at work until I was crying in my cubicle. And I'm not kidding when I say it's a daily thing. He'll sometimes wake me up super early in the morning. I work later shifts. I normally sleep till 11 a.m., wanting my debit card to go to the gas station to buy what he wants. and if I say no, he'll get really upset and say what I mentioned before and keep asking, and I won't get to sleep again until I say yes, and it's caused me to go into work incredibly sleep deprived before. He doesn't have a job. I work full-time and I go to college full-time, and I honestly think he doesn't have a concept of money spending or making. There have been times where I'll save small amounts of money for emergencies, and then once he finds out, it's gone in a few days. I was so proud of myself for saving $100, and literally in 3 days it was gone due to his gas station trips, and I ended up crying in frustration. Keep in mind, I'm not a big money maker. I just got a raise to where I make $18.50 an hour. What really irked me though is just recently he told me that I'm irresponsible with my money to be broke all the time, and that I have no reason to be struggling with money. He kept having me pull out cash advances, around $200 now, and kept citing how I spent $20 on Sims. It was the first time I bought something for myself that wasn't food for us in months. What bothered me even more is he brought up how I spent my money on my exes, and he said, "You don't owe me. I just feel like it's unfair that the crappy guys you dated got nice things, but I don't." I had felt like I've actually spent more on him than the past 2 relationships I've been in. So I went through my credit card statements and my bank statements, and I found out that since August alone, I've spent almost $5,000 on him and put all the transactions into an Excel document. I want to show him it to prove that I've spent a lot more than he thought. He said that I've maybe spent $450, but I feel like I would be the jerk because of spending all that time just to prove him wrong seems really crappy of me, and as he said before, it's not like he's threatening me and demanding money. So I kinda want to keep quiet, but he won't stop, and I can't handle the stress anymore. Hun, he thinks he's entitled to your money and uses it on frivolous, non-necessary things. And then when you try to say no, he gaslights you and makes you feel so terrible you give in to his demands. He doesn't care about you, he cares about what you provide. Seriously, this is beyond just not being good with money. This is him manipulating you into getting what he wants, and no spreadsheet will change that. It's honestly better if you leave him. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Your boyfriend is gaslighting the crap out of you and using you for money. He has some nerve to claim that you're the one who's bad with money when it sounds like almost all of your income is going towards him. My ultimate suggestion would actually be to genuinely consider leaving him, as hard as it is to hear. You deserve to be treated so much better, and right now he is showing you no respect or dignity. For him to cause you to cry at work because of how much he's pressuring you to give him money is so dangerous for your mental and physical health. If you really want to work things out with him, which you have every right to want to, I would suggest that you absolutely show him your Excel sheet stating how much money you've spent on him. And better yet, figure out how much money you've spent on yourself, subscriptions, gas, etc., and then compare it to what you've spent on him so that he can actually visualize what he's doing to you. I hope that you're able to find your own voice and stand up for yourself. You're not a doormat for your boyfriend and his needs. And if you absolutely do end up staying with him, cut him off completely and do not ever give him money. He needs to get his own job. He has no excuse whatsoever for not getting a job. If he needs gas money, then he can earn his own gas money and not gaslight and bully his girlfriend into being a sugar mommy instead of a girlfriend. If you stay with him and don't change anything or set some extreme boundaries with him, he will probably send you hurtling towards being broke and likely in debt. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. Where you ladies of Reddit find these boyfriends of yours, I will never know. Am I the jerk for uninviting my cousins from my wedding, for feeding info to my mom? I, 28, male, am an only child. When I was 12, my parents divorced when my dad found out my mom cheated on him. This was devastating to my dad. My parents were best friends and started dating when they were 17. I played sports and my dad was my coach, so I had a much closer relationship to him than my mom. I was supposed to spend 1 week at my mom's, then the next week at my dad's, but I would usually just lock myself in my room at my mom's. Usually my dad would drop me off and I would get on my bike and ride the couple miles back to his house. My mom would ask me things and I would literally pretend like she didn't exist. It got so bad that lawyers got involved, thinking my dad was turning me against my mom. My dad encouraged me to spend time with my mom, but I couldn't. My mom tried putting us in therapy, but I would just sit there till the time was up, not saying a word to her. Eventually, my mom broke down and let me just live with my dad. I haven't spoken a word to my mom in 15 years. She would show up to my games alone. Sometimes I would ask my dad to tell her to leave. Sometimes I didn't even notice she was there. She would try talking to me after, and I would walk right past her. I cut her whole family off, besides a few of my cousins that were around my age. She showed up to my high school graduation, and I asked a couple teachers to remove her, and they did. She never dated anyone else to my knowledge and was still attempting to reconcile with my dad a few years before he passed, calling it the biggest mistake of her life and begging my dad to forgive her. When my dad passed a couple years ago, she tried to show up to the funeral and I met her outside to ask her to leave. My fiancée, Rachel, was with me when I did this, and my mom cried upon hearing we were engaged. Rachel introduced herself as my fiancée, saying she couldn't believe I hated her still this many years later. So last week, I received a letter from my mom with a large check inside. In the letter, she said she couldn't live knowing that she wouldn't be invited to her only kid's wedding, that her whole family is hurt that I cut them off, and that she had been keeping tabs on me all these years through my cousin's updates out of respect for me, but couldn't handle not being at the wedding. I ripped the check up and sent it back to the return address. She shouldn't have even known my address, as I keep her blocked on all social media. I called up my cousins who admitted that since I was 14, they've been providing my mom with updates on me. Prom pics, college updates, engagement photos, and they sent her my address. I was so mad that I told them they wouldn't be invited to the wedding anymore because I don't want my mom getting access to it. Rachel is saying I'm going too far now, and uninviting my cousins along with freezing out my mom's whole family because of her actions is a jerk move. Am I the jerk? Edit. The cheating was with a teammate's dad. This was highly embarrassing for me and caused me to have to move towns, caused me to lose friends. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're the jerk. Acting out as a 12-year-old is to be expected. Deciding not to ever forgive your mom is totally your right, though it was 16 years ago, and you, while affected, were not really the aggrieved party. The fact that you're still throwing tantrums like a 12-year-old at the age of 28 makes you the jerk. Edit. I'd even go so far as to say your fiancé should consider this a pretty serious red flag. The fact that you can act with such hatred and spite over something that happened over 16 years ago and only peripherally involved you, to me shows a pretty serious character flaw. At the very least, she should be concerned about what it would take for you to direct that anger at her and what form that anger would take. That's exactly what I thought. Being engaged to someone so unforgiving and showing so little empathy, even to their own mother, would scare the crap out of me. I would advise her to run. My thoughts exactly. I would be petrified to marry someone who is so unforgiving. Fiancé needs to run away from this relationship fast, and OP needs professional help to heal those open wounds. Yup, I'm gonna have to climb out onto that limb beside you and say you're the jerk. Two things jump out at me here. One, that OP was even madder at his mom than his father, who was over her cheating. This much is clear from his father encouraging him to spend time with his mom in spite of everything. Two, that even OP's fiancé is telling him he's going too far in his hatred for his mother and uninviting cousins and freezing out his mom's whole side of the family. Look, OP, I feel sorry for you and what you went through. No one says you ever have to forgive your mother for what she did, but you're taking it out on her entire family, and that's just wrong. Listen to your fiancé. She sees how unhealthy holding on to such hatred for your mother is for you. Whatever you decide to do, best of luck to you. But don't throw away your relationship with some cousins you felt close enough to that you invited them to your wedding 15 years after the divorce. That would make you the jerk to yourself more than anything. I've given this a lot of thought, and I feel like a lot of the votes in favor of him being the jerk here are a bit misguided and empathizing with the wrong person. I will say I do agree with the fact that he needs therapy, and that amount of cortisol, which is what will happen from this level of anger, isn't healthy. But all that said, I don't blame him for that. I get feeling sorry for the mother, who so obviously feels bad about what she's done. Really, I do. But I don't think his actions are indicative of a lack of empathy for his mother so much as unresolved hurt from the domino effect her actions had on him. In fact, I think it's pretty clear this is the result of trauma. Like, apathy is the opposite of empathy, really. But he so clearly still cares, or he wouldn't be so angry. People are defending the fact that it wasn't his business, and that she's allowed to have flaws. And yes, she is. But there is a consequence/outcome for every single thing we do. Sometimes positive, sometimes negative. She made her bed and found out it was broken in more than one place. It sucks, but this is the consequence for her actions. And for the record, to all the people who say it isn't his business, it absolutely is his business. He's obviously been traumatized by this series of events. Kids aren't stupid. It's pretty clear that they can pick up on stuff from family members. The best intending parents will do everything in their power not to let it impact their kids, but sometimes it's just inevitable. Even if his father was hurt more, in theory, by his mother's actions, clearly there have been side effects that have occurred outside of that one instance. Bullying is no joke, and it's no surprise that he holds her responsible as the reason it happened. I mean, had she not cheated, then the circumstances might have been different. Also, just because his father took the brunt of the initial pain doesn't mean he didn't also experience his own horrible pain. Since when is it a competition? No two people have the same threshold for the same types of pain. We're all different. Regarding the cousins and his mother, even in the absence of specific instructions not to keep his mother updated on him with his sometimes public, sometimes private information, I feel like they're paying a price for their own actions too. You wouldn't have to tell me not to give updates to someone who hurt you and decided to go no contact with. It's blatant disregard for his very clearly implied boundaries, and it's betrayal. You're basically saying you feel worse for the aggressor than the victim if you're willing to prioritize the aggressor's wants over the victim's. Even if it doesn't seem fair, that was not their call to make. I'm really not sure how people are justifying this. They got involved in the mother's favor, and now people are like surprised Pikachu face that there are consequences for that. Finally, I really don't think people are being fair here regarding how he's treating his mother. He has made his choice. She has time and time again not respected it. She needed to write him a letter that expresses how sorry she is, that if OP is ever willing to reconcile, she is willing and ready, and then let the ball be in his court. Then she needed to leave him the heck alone. Why is everyone glossing over this? Even if she has good intentions, she's still dismissing someone she hurt in favor of what she feels is best for her. She tried to bribe him with money. Hello? If I were being generous, I'd say not the jerk, because I don't think, despite everything I said, that there were any intended jerks here. But truthfully, I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that blatantly disregarding OP's wants in favor of the mother is a bit of a jerk thing to do by his cousins, and a jerk move by his mother to not respect his choice, no matter how sorry she is. Ultimately, what would make OP the jerk is if he was the instigator. But he isn't. He is reactionary. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. I think he just doesn't want to have any contact with his mother and doesn't want his cousins sharing all his information with her. If they could just respect his boundaries, everything would be fine. Am I the jerk for selling my ex-fiancé's family heirloom when he wouldn't pay me back for our canceled wedding? I, 27 female, was supposed to get married to my ex-fiancé, Mason, 29 male, on the 20th of this month. But last week, a mutual friend caught him cheating with his ex, Kim, so I called it off. Because it's so close to our wedding date, I had already booked everything like the venue, catering, and everything else. I barely managed to get any money back as it's mostly non-refundable, so in total, I've lost $20,000. Last year, I took out a loan to cover the cost of the wedding. The longer I take to repay it, the more interest it gets. When we first got engaged, Mason agreed to sharing our finances together, meaning had we got married, I would have been able to pay it off. This was supposed to be in our prenup, but because we didn't get married, it meant he no longer had to share finances. I asked him if he was still willing to help and told him that I will go into debt if he doesn't, as I can't repay it alone. He told me, "It isn't my problem you took out a loan you can't pay back," and stopped responding after that. When we got engaged, Mason proposed to me with a family heirloom ring belonging to his great-grandmother that was worth $25,000. When we canceled the wedding, he told me he wanted the ring back, but we never got around to arranging a time he could pick it up. Because I don't want to go into debt, I told him that if he didn't agree to help pay it off, I wanted a lawyer involved, that I would sell the ring. He didn't reply and ignored the messages. However, after talking to a mutual friend, Jake, I found out he had actually read the messages and told everyone he didn't care because I wouldn't do it. I asked Jake to tell Mason that if I don't get a message from him in the next 24 hours, that I would sell the ring. Jake told me he again said he didn't care and didn't think I would do it. So the next day, I sold the ring to an online website and messaged Mason to tell him it had been done and told him he shouldn't have underestimated me. He started losing it on me, saying I didn't scare him and that he would be around for the ring later. True to his word, he came to my house demanding the ring, and I told him I sold it already and showed him the proof. He blew up at me, saying I was a petty jerk and that I shouldn't have sold it because it wasn't just a ring, it was an heirloom that meant a lot to his family. A lot of my family members think I overreacted and shouldn't have gone to extreme measures, as it will be hard for him to get the ring back, even if he can at all. Am I the jerk for selling his great-grandmother's ring? Not the jerk. You, pay me back or I'll sell the ring. Mason, no. You, sells the ring. Mason, shocked Pikachu face. You gave him all the warnings in the world. Can't be the jerk given that. Yeah, on top of that, he's an ex because he got caught cheating. Not the jerk. The cheating alone should be good enough basis for Mason to pay OB back. Her loans essentially went to waste because he can't be loyal to her. She only did what she needed to. Does this dude have a brain? The stupidest thing you can do to a family heirloom is give it to someone you know you will cheat on. If it's so meaningful and invaluable, try giving it to someone who gives a darn about it. And then to ignore her because she wouldn't dare sell it? Who does this dude think he is? OP, not the jerk. You let him off easy. I'd use the remaining money to buy a cheaper copy of the ring, take a beautiful photo of it, then tell Mason you decided to keep the ring because he wouldn't pay and the heirloom has special debt-paying powers. Gotta get something out of that crappy engagement. Also, never take out a loan for weddings. OP, if you can't afford a wedding without taking out loans, just do it in a courthouse. You can never know if your fiancé turns out to be a Mason. I believe that engagement rings and heirlooms should be returned after a breakup. That being said, he cheated a month before the wedding, blocked your messages, refused to help pay, and mocked you. As Reddit loves to say, he messed around and found out. Not the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. I don't blame her one bit for selling that ring. If Mason hadn't been such a dirtbag, none of this would have happened. Am I the jerk for demanding my husband replace all the books he threw away? I, female 31, am a reader. Used to read a lot in my teenage years as an escape method from many of my problems, and recently got back into reading. I read classic books since this category is my favorite. I spend time and effort visiting libraries and online shops to collect books. Thing is, my husband, male 33, hates when I read. We've just returned from honeymoon 2 months ago, and he's been complaining about books taking our special time away, specifically at night, but I like to think that I'm balancing with my reading time. He has started calling me grandma, or say I remind him of an old lady neighbor to get me to quit reading, but it didn't budge me. A week ago, I found out that he's given my book collection away, and I was devastated after he defended himself, saying he did this for my own good and for the sake of our marriage, since I seemed to forget my priorities. I flipped out, yelled at him that those books were hard to get, and demanded he pay me and replace them right then and there. But he said that I really should invest my time in an outdoor hobby we could both do, but I was having none of it and demanded he replace the books. I gave him a list of every name of every book, and when he saw it, he laughed and asked if I was really still thinking about those books and suggested I move on. But I yelled at him, telling him he has a week to replace them and that was it. He's trying to get me to let it go, and had others say it was childish of me to start a fight over some books while the library is open, but they got no comment from me. Am I the jerk for expecting him to replace the books? Edit. Yes, my husband knew about my love for reading, but like I said, it's been a long time since I've read a book. I've read stuff online here and there, and so this is recent. I confess that my husband did express that he felt neglected and ignored by me when I'm reading, but I didn't think his concerns were legit. What do I plan on doing if he keeps stalling and didn't replace the books in a week? I've already told him what I'd do. Now I've given him extra days, which upsets him even more. And finally, am I married to Gaston? No comment on that. Not the jerk. Time to get an annulment or divorce. He seems very controlling and it will only get worse. Not the jerk. To be honest, I would divorce right away if my partner did something like this. Just throwing away something your partner enjoys and that is actually a healthy hobby is just plain toxic. Not the jerk. This was a power move, trying to assert control and completely jumping over boundaries. It's worrying that he did this just 2 to 3 months after you got married. Even if this was the only red flag, and outside of this he's a wonderful human being, it's not tolerable, and he shouldn't be allowed to think that it's no big deal. Do not back down, and he needs to understand why what he did is unacceptable. He's the one who started a fight over books, and also the one who escalated it. You standing up for yourself isn't starting a fight. He may need some sort of counseling. I do not recommend couples counseling just yet, mostly because we don't know if there are more red flags, and there are certain relationships which do not benefit from couples counseling. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. There's 2 types of people in this world. Those who love to read books and those who love to play video games. I can't wait for the new Gran Turismo. I kicked out my sister and her newborn baby after she tried to take my son's room. My sister, 27 female, is not going through a good time right now. She had my niece, Mia, just 5 weeks ago, and then she found out her boyfriend had been cheating on her the whole time and even knocked up the other chick. She left their place with Mia and she asked me if they could stay with us for a few days. My, 25 male, place is pretty small, so only place I could offer her is the living room. I have twin boys who are 6 and they share their room. My sister wanted their room, but I told her that's their space. I offered mine, but she thought it would be better to have theirs because it's a lot bigger and she needs somewhere to put the baby's things like the bassinet, changing table, and all that stuff. First week, we kept arguing about that. Then when I got home yesterday, my son Noah was crying because he said his auntie took all their stuff from the room. Their toy chest and some furniture were moved into the hallway. She was trying to fit them into my room. I got so mad, I made her put everything back. I really wanted to help my sister with her dealing with so much already, but making one of my kids cry and trying to take their room was enough for me. She was told to leave. Issue is, she has nowhere to stay with a newborn baby. She had to go all the way back home to stay with our parents, and since they live far, she had to quit her job, which means she's no longer has a stable income. She hasn't stopped telling me I'm a terrible brother, adding more issues to her life and my nieces. My sister says it wasn't a big deal and that she and her daughter have their own space in my place. Now she says because of my reaction, I've made Fried life harder. Not the jerk. She said she was only staying a few days. She was obviously planning on staying much longer. You offered her your room and it wasn't good enough for her. You weren't going to win here. OP, I can see that, yeah. Don't see why space had to be such a big issue with her. My ex and I lived in a 1-bedroom with 2 newborns. It was cramped, yeah, but we were fine. Because once the space is hers, it's a lot harder for you to make her give it up. Obviously, you don't really need the space since you can fit your kids in your room, so why should she have to move out when everyone can fit? And when it gets too crowded, maybe you need to find a new place and let her have this one. Oh, but she can't pay rent right now. I'm sorry, she's in a bad situation, yes, but she has no right to hurt you or kick them out of their own room. Not the jerk. She tries to kick your kids out of their own room while you're gone, when you've told her no? Yeah, that gets her a one-way ticket out of there. Not the jerk. You kindly gave her a place to stay when she needed support. You offered her your living room, and when she complained, you even offered her your own room. The only place you said she couldn't stay was your son's room. So what did she do? She waited until you were out of the house to completely disregard your only rule, and did so in such a way to cause your son distress. Major jerk. Since she refuses to abide by your rules, it is her decision to move in with her second choice option. I'm sorry that she's going through this stuff with her boyfriend, but that doesn't give her the license to treat you or your sons poorly, nor does it shield her from the consequences of her actions. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his sister? Please let us know. I can't imagine what it's like to have a Karen for a sister. Husband finds out how much money I make. Now he wants to cancel our prenup. So I, female 32, had been married to my husband, male 34, for 6 years. Before we got married, he had me sign a prenup stating that our financials would always be separate and the only thing we would share was an expense account to pay for household-related fees. The reason for this was because he was making pretty good money and I was in graduate school, so my financial situation was pretty bad, but I signed nonetheless because I understood he wanted to protect himself. Anyway, fast forward to now. I've been out of school for about 4 years and I make more than 3 times as much as he does. I never asked how much he makes and he's never asked me either. Anyway, 2 weeks ago, I told him that I was thinking about buying a new car as the one I had was really old since I had it since my undergraduate days. He wasn't really interested and just told me to get whatever I liked. So a week ago, I decided to make the plunge and get an Audi. I was pretty excited as I had always wanted one. At the time, my husband was on a business trip. He got back yesterday and I showed him my car. He was really happy for me. However, later he asked me what my monthly payments were as the Audi was pretty new. At this point, I told him that I had made the purchase in cash and that I had no monthly payments. He was taken back and asked with what money, and I answered that I made more than enough money to be able to afford it. He didn't talk after that, and I thought that was that. However, after a few hours, he came back to me and told me that he thinks we should void the prenup. This is where I might be the jerk. I laughed in his face and asked him why I would agree to that, and his answer was that we're married and should share our financials. I told him that we've been married for 6 years, and yet we've never shared financials, and I was fine with what we were doing, and his sudden change of heart was very suspicious. He called me a bunch of names and stormed out and didn't come home, and I guess he told his family about our fight, and they called to berate me and say how he supported me while I was in school. He didn't, and now I'm wondering if I was the jerk. Edit. I knew his salary when we got together. However, he's since gotten promoted, and at first when I used to ask, he would make comments that it was rude of me to ask how much he made, so I stopped. He's never really been interested in my career or job, and we don't bring our work home. The reason I make 3 times what he makes, I made the assumption from what I knew his salary had been, is because I work as a CRNA and he works as a software engineer. Edit 2. I didn't expect so many comments. Thanks everyone for sharing your opinions. This post has really made me question everything in my life. I think I'm going to take a leave of absence from my work to sort out my life. My husband was only my second relationship, and I guess I was too caught up in school, work, and debt to really see that my marriage was a sham. I'm not blameless, which is hard to swallow. So I'm going to have a conversation with my husband and see where we go from here, if anywhere. Last edit. Since it's been a point of contention, I'm going to clear up a few things. I make $175 an hour and work between 40 to 48 hours a week. From what I know, he made about $90,000 a year when we got together. I'm sure it's higher now. He also works less hours. We live in a state that is not expensive, so my monthly contribution is about $1,000 to $1,200 a month. He had some property in Nebraska, so he wanted to protect that, and I had debt from school. He did too, but mine was bigger. Not the jerk. Not gonna lie, you two don't sound like partners. You sound like you're against each other in life. Take this change of heart as the red flag that it is and consider how you want to proceed. My wife and I have always been open about our earnings because it's part of our household finances. He can't demand separate finances and suddenly demand they be combined when he realizes she has more. Not the jerk. I can definitely understand relationships where couples want to keep their finances separate, even if that's not how I do it. What mystifies me, though, is couples who apparently have not the slightest idea what one another's financial situation actually looks like. How do you run a household that way? Surely, knowing what your partner makes is pretty baseline information for making a life together work, or at least just something that a married couple of 6 years would discuss with each other at some point. So he wanted the prenup initially to protect his money because you didn't have much, and now you have more money. He wants to void the prenup so he can have more of your money? No wonder you laughed in his face. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. He got what he wanted. You deserve the same protection. He was fine for 6 years, but suddenly when he finds out you have more money, he wants to break the prenup? Sounds like the consequences of his own actions. Not the jerk. I told my brother and sister-in-law that their pregnancy announcement was trashy. My family has a 21+ gift exchange, volunteer only. If you sign up, you have to spend $20 on each person. We have a Google Doc with a list of things people would like, their sizes, and favorite snacks. You follow the list, you spend $20 per person, and we have the exchange after the kids go to sleep. My sister-in-law, Kelsey, 34 female, and my brother, Kyle, 30 male, both signed up to be on the list. They asked to go last because they had something special they wanted everyone to open together. Everyone else followed the list and got people something they would like. Kelsey and Kyle spent $5 per person. It was a sonogram picture in a cheap dollar store frame, a note saying $35 has been donated to the baby in your name, and a 2XL shirt with puffy paint that said Baby Bella 2022. We all said congrats about the baby and talked about it for a bit. My dad then said, "Do you want to finish the exchange? This is great news, but we have to be heading home, so if you want to get the rest of the presents." Kelsey said, "That is the gift." Kyle got up to use the bathroom, and my dad followed after him. They had an argument in the hallway, and Kyle stormed out. Kelsey followed him. My dad was like, "Everyone can take their gifts back for Kyle and Kelsey, because this is BS, and they knew exactly what they were doing." A few people did take their gifts back and left, but the rest of us sort of sat there until it calmed down and then went home. Kyle ended up showing up at my house 2 days later with a real present and apologized. He said it in a very angry tone. "Kelsey has been crying about it for days now, so thank Dad for ruining the surprise." He then asked if I liked the gift, and I said no. He asked why not. I said, "Well, Everyone else got you a real present with thought put into it. You didn't even get me a shirt that fits, that was printed professionally, and then spent the majority of the money on yourself. It felt cheap and ruined the spirit of the exchange. He called me a jerk and left. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. How is it considered appropriate to gift oneself the money that was supposed to be spent on a gift for others? Dad was correct in that it was a BS move by Kyle and Kelsey, but think he went about it in the wrong way. OP. My dad had a few beers before the whole conversation went down, so that might have been why it ended up being an argument. Kelsey was sober, but Kyle had a few beers as well. They tend to butt heads anyways. Your dad is kind of awesome. I would want to do that, but would have kept my mouth shut and just stopped doing gifts with them moving forward. You are 100% not the jerk, as you didn't give him the truth until he pressed. Your dad is the dad I wish all dads would be. He didn't let his kid get away with cheating the system. He used his voice as a parent to hold his kid accountable. That audacity. Not the jerk. Who the heck thinks it's socially acceptable to spend money on themselves and pretend it's a gift for someone else? And 2X sweatshirts for everyone? That just smacks of, the dollar store had these on clearance, so even less money to spend on someone else. OP. Everything they bought was from the dollar store. I was in there the other day, and the same shirts were there. No one in my family wears a 2XL minus one person, and the shirt was too small for that person. They didn't even bother to remember the sizes of people or just order professional Baby Bella shirts. Yeah, that's beyond tacky. I mean, who wants to wear an extended family member's poorly done pregnancy announcement shirt out of the house, especially when they don't even fit? It's bad enough they took that tacky route to begin with, but to have the audacity to use it as part of a gift exchange they volunteered to be part of and knew the rules for? Miss Manners would rip them a new one. OP. When my sister announced her pregnancy, she did get t-shirts from my parents that said Nana and Pop Pop, but they were professionally done and not part of any gift exchange. We just aren't really baby people in my family. We love the kids, but no one is in awe of pregnancy, and it's just a normal part of life. So Kelsey is probably not going to be happy with us. My husband demands I delete my son's first birthday pictures because he wasn't in them. I'm female, 26, and my husband, Tom, male, 33, has been admitted to the hospital for some health issues, and unfortunately, he couldn't be there for our son's first birthday that my family and I celebrated days ago. I was visiting Tom and started showing him pictures I took at our son's birthday party, and he looked understandably sad, but then, and out of the blue, asked me to delete them because it hurt not being there, and those pictures, if kept, will always be a reminder that he missed his son's first birthday. I asked him if he was kidding and told him it was illogical and selfish of him to ask me to delete the pictures and hide all the evidence of the party just because he wasn't part of it. Besides, I plan on keeping those as memories for our son, so he should think about what is best for our son. He argued that our son won't remember this anyway, and I should admit that the party was just for me and my family, and that I want to keep those pictures out of spite and to be able to use them in every argument to prove to our son and everyone else what an awful parent he is to miss his son's first birthday celebration. I kept my cool and just said no. He snapped and yelled, saying I was disrespecting his wishes and that as family, we do everything together or don't do it at all, period. Still demanded I delete those pictures, every last one of them right then and there. But I said no and left after he started calling me names like heinous and another word he shouldn't have been calling me, and said I was devoid of any sympathy and understanding for his circumstances. He sent his parents over to make a scene the next day. His mom lost it on me and accused me of parental alienation. I told her and her husband to leave my place, but they said my husband sent them to do a job and they want to make sure it's done, then proceeded to demand I delete the birthday pictures in that instant. I said no, and his mom said he's the dad, and dad said those pictures need to go. She then tried to take my phone, but I lost it on them and kicked them out because they kept testing my patience and pushing me to my limits. I refused to respond to them as well as Tom, thinking we'll figure this out in my next visit to the hospital, but he's banned me from visiting until I wipe those pictures off my phone, and it irked me so much that I don't care anymore if I can no longer visit him. Mom and family are telling me to see where Tom's coming from and keep the peace and just delete those pictures because it's not worth it. But it wasn't like I posted them publicly on Facebook, so what the heck is this reaction? I mean, Tom can be overdramatic and his family are controlling, but am I the jerk? Not the jerk. He is gaslighting you by pretending this is about family when it's about him. He cares less about having missed the birthday but more about how it could make him look. Please make sure you save those pics in some folder or cloud he doesn't know about or has access to. He might actually go through your phone and delete them when you're not looking. Or you could just leave him. Email them to a friend that you trust and don't tell him. That way, if he sneaks into your phone and deletes them, you have an online backup and a friend has an online backup. Yup, make as many backups as possible. Thumb drive of pictures in a trusted friend's house, multiple cloud accounts, start a Shuttlefly album, email to yourself, then archive the email so it's not showing up in your inbox. Then think about whether you really want a man/family like this in you and your son's life. Not the jerk. I lost the last pictures of my dog due to a crappy boyfriend that was almost 12 years ago now, and I still will randomly start crying about it. For all that you hold dear in this world, please send them to friends, a secret email account, post them on a private folder on Imager or Flickr. Do all of these things so that you have multiple places of backups should someone get a hold of your phone and delete them. Do it right now. Not the jerk. Please make backups. Not the jerk. Your kid shouldn't be denied photos of his first birthday because it makes his dad sad, especially since deleting the photos won't fix it. Well, what do you think? Should OP delete the pictures or not? Please let us know. What she should do is leave this bozo and file a restraining order. This guy sounds like he belongs in a Lifetime movie. Am I the jerk for refusing to go to my mother's wedding because my sister and her service dog will be there? I'm 20, female, and my sister, who's 18, has quite severe epilepsy. She has taken medication, but for some extra protection a few years ago, when I was 15, my parents and her doctor decided it would be best if she got a dog that could warn her when she would have episodes. They also said some of the side effects of the medication were not ideal. I, however, am severely allergic to dogs. Most dogs I cannot be around. However, my grandmother had a purebred poodle that I never had any reaction to, so I asked that the dog they get be a poodle so that I can live in the house without being miserable. They did look into it, but they found no groups near us that purebred poodles for service work. So they got an F1B golden doodle that's 25% poodle and 75% golden retriever. My father was against the dog and wanted to at least wait until I had gone to college, but my mother and the doctor insisted, so we got the dog. The dog still caused an allergic reaction because of the golden retriever, and there was no allergy medicine that completely worked and had no drowsiness side effects, and since I had school and work and sports, I couldn't take it. When my parents got divorced, it was still an issue because the dog was at both houses. When I went to college, I tried to avoid going home because I would have to be around the dog, and when I did, I only went to my dad's house. My mother is getting married again in April. She invited me and my sister. I was surprised she wanted me to go since she said she was keeping it small, but she said she really wanted me there. However, my sister and her dog are going to be there, so I politely declined and I made plans for that day. My mother is very upset and says she wants me to just take medicine to get over it and that I'm being unreasonable. I don't think I am because I don't want to go, and I don't think I should have to take medicine to be at the wedding of someone who doesn't care about my medical needs, but she thinks I should just suck it up. Other family members think I'm being ridiculous as well and trying to hurt my mother by refusing to go. Am I the jerk here? Not the jerk. The dog isn't there as a pet. Her doctor confirmed that getting one was required due to the severity of her epilepsy. You can't be around the dog because of your allergies and have said as much. It seems like a no-win situation, whatever you choose. The only way you may be the jerk is if you can take medication that would help for a couple of hours and are choosing not to out of principle rather than an issue with side effects or similar. With OP's comments throughout the post, it does seem like she could take medication, but is being petty about the dog because she feels her family didn't prioritize her allergies over her sister's service dog. Even though OP clearly states that her family tried to find a dog to suit OP's allergies, and her sister's doctor recommended not waiting to get the dog until OP was in college. And in that case, even though I think OP is leaning into their resentment of their family and using the dog allergy as the excuse, I definitely don't think they should go to the wedding. They'll just resent their mom and sister more. Just hold firm to your word and deal with the consequences. I think you're right, in that OP can't go to the wedding with this much resentment, but that's why I think the opposite. She actually needs to talk with her family about this. She can't avoid family events for the rest of her life, so she needs to really discuss it with them. Now, if they can't come to a solution before the wedding, then she shouldn't go, but the family really needs to talk this out, possibly in therapy. Am I the jerk for thinking the car was a gift? I, 26, female, am from Connecticut. I'm the daughter of two extremely frugal and cheap parents. Growing up, the gifts were more about a low price tag than actually getting me something special, something I wanted, or something related to my interests. It made me feel bad because I'm an only child and I felt like my parents didn't know who I was and didn't put in any effort into making me feel special. I often got made fun of growing up because my parents refused to buy me clothes, so I always looked disheveled. My mom always vented to me about money as a kid, and I learned to stop asking for things, even money for lunch, because they always complained and accused me of being spoiled. 1.5 years ago, on my 25th birthday, my parents were out of town on vacation at their second house. I didn't know what I wanted and didn't ask for a gift, so I didn't expect anything other than a happy birthday text. I got a card, and inside it were 2 photos. One was of a used Volkswagen, and the other of a used roof rack with a couple missing pieces. A week later, they dropped both off, and I've been using them ever since. I started crying because I didn't think anyone has ever given me anything so nice or special. I was tearing up because they knew how much I loved my old station wagon and was sad I was forced to sell it. I also had a really difficult childhood, and I felt like it was a gesture that they were trying to make up for all the strained years we had. I felt so surprised because I really expected nothing, and I cried about it to my friends. Fast forward to today. My dad makes a joke about selling the Volkswagen, and after a few other exchanges, I realized the car was never mine. My parents start making fun of me for thinking anyone would receive a car as a gift, and once again suggest that I'm spoiled and entitled. Apparently, the used roof rack was the gift. Now I'm upset because I feel like they toyed with my emotions, and the special warm feeling I had doesn't mean anything now. I told them if it wasn't a gift, they shouldn't have included the photo of the car in my birthday letter. The only reason there's any miscommunication is because they never said the car wasn't mine and weren't even there for my birthday. I'm not upset the car isn't mine or that I won't get it. I at least have a car to use. I'm upset because this isn't the first time I've gotten my hopes up only to be disappointed later because they forgot or changed their mind. It makes me feel manipulated. I'm upset because they keep pushing this narrative that I'm entitled. I'm upset because I showed them the old video of me crying on my birthday and they laughed about it. Why would they gift you a roof rack when you don't even have a car? Your parents are horrible. I'm really sorry. Not the jerk. I thought the exact same. A rack for an item that can be taken away at will? Like, why bother? And with missing pieces? OP, I didn't even think of that. Even if I get another car, the roof rack might not be compatible. They said they got the roof rack so I could put a kayak on it, but I don't own a kayak either. Not the jerk. They're playing you. Making you feel bad makes them feel better. They are toxic and always will be. They down you because they know that once you drop them, you'll never come back to their BS. Get as far away as fast as you can. They don't deserve you in their lives. They think you're entitled. You are entitled to a loving, caring family, and you know it, and that's why all this hurts so much. They're on vacation at their second home, yet never provided you clothes growing up? OP, I'm so sorry. Not the jerk. I had clothes, t-shirts and shorts. I just didn't look like I took care of myself because we never threw stuff away because getting new stuff was rare. It didn't really match up with what was fashionable, and I didn't get to choose what it was. Even after I got bullied, my mom only let me buy 1 or 2 things that were cool, and it was embarrassing because I wore the same 2 outfits every week to try and fit in, and they got really bad pit stains on them. Not the jerk. Your parents are crappy. Second home? Playing the poor card about everything while taking care of themselves? My father pulled this kind of crap all the time. Haven't spoken to him in 20 years and won't. You should just cut ties and tell them to buzz off. Stepbrother invited his work friends to my wedding and I said no. I'm getting married soon and we have a pretty strict number of guests invited. I have invited family members and my own friends and my partner his. My own siblings asked me if they could invite their friends, and I've told them it's impossible because we've reached the maximum number of guests allowed. They've been fine with this. Now, the problem is this. My stepbrother spoke with my mom, my biological mother, and his stepmother, and said he wants to invite his work friends to the wedding. My mom said she didn't say yes to him, but nor did she specify no. She discussed it with my dad, and dad was pretty annoyed because he understands stepbrother has no right to do this. My sister overheard this conversation and told me about it. I messaged stepbrother and told him the guest list is full, so he cannot invite anyone, and other siblings have been told no too, so I won't make an exception for him. He called dad and told him about my message, stating he has already invited his work friends now, and he can't disinvite them. Dad has said he will discuss with me and let him know. When Dad asked, I told him no straight up. The guest list has been exhausted, and I will not disinvite people I want at the wedding just because stepbrother wants his work friends there. Now Dad and Mom are saying I should let stepbrother invite his friends, as he's already told them, so it will be an embarrassing situation for us all, and not everyone on the list will come anyway, so there will be spare seats, something we can't be certain about. They are emotionally blackmailing me, telling me let it slide this time, despite stepbrother being in the wrong. I've said no to Dad, but I feel bad. We haven't had the best relationship with stepbrother, and I think Dad and Mom feel if I stand my ground on this, stepbrother will not come to the wedding and it will look bad on the family. So, am I the jerk for saying no? Edit. Someone mentioned in the comments that I should edit the post to add this information. I am Asian, and it's usually normal in our culture to invite anyone and everyone to our weddings. However, I am on a budget, and there are only a specific number of guests being catered for, so this is not an option for my wedding. Not the jerk. If he had the nerve to invite people without your permission, he can use it to disinvite them just the same. Either that, or they'll be turned away at the door. This is exactly what I said to Dad, but as I mentioned in a previous comment, because I am Asian, my parents feel it looks bad on us and our reputation if he turns around and disinvites them. My point is that he shouldn't have even invited them in the first place, so he can face the embarrassment and disinvite them. Idiot neighbor sells us back our rubbish and says we owe him money. I used to have a crazy neighbor who caused a lot of problems in this block, but thankfully he left. Now I have an even more crazy junkie neighbor. He goes in the bin room and rips open every bag of rubbish and goes through it all, including people's mail, then says he's going to use people's details to get a loan, etc. Wouldn't work, but that's not the point. He then goes door to door in this block, trying to sell the stuff he just pulled out of the bin for this building. So he's literally trying to sell us back our own rubbish. Everyone is mad with him for the mess he makes in the bin room and for trying to sell us our own rubbish. But even worse, he now keeps telling people they owe him money when they don't, for his head kicked in recently for saying it to my neighbor's girlfriend. Then the other day he was trying to sell me crap while I was waiting for the lift, and I said no, so he went to my door after I left and gave my boyfriend a roll of wallpaper, then said my boyfriend had to pay him for it later. We didn't want his stupid wallpaper. My boyfriend said, nah, keep it. But this idiot neighbor was like, your girlfriend owes me 25 pounds, so you just need to give it to me now. I have never owed him anything. In fact, he still owes me the 10 pounds he borrowed when I first met him. But more importantly, he's already had his head kicked in for him saying someone's girlfriend owes him money when she didn't. Why is he still trying it? I want a normal neighbor for once, who doesn't try to demand money from everyone. Oh yeah, he also feels entitled to demand my meds, saying he needs them so he can get to sleep. And if I say no, or give him 2, he's like, but you gave me 6 before. I'm prescribed them because I need them, not so some idiot can take them off me. Sorry, I kinda rushed this and probably didn't make it very interesting. Edit. Just saw him again. He said, look, someone's put a unicorn doormat at my door. I think it was, insert name of the neighbor who beat him up. I told him, you brought that in yourself the other day. He insisted that wasn't the case, and I said, yes you did. I saw you, and when you went to my door insisting to my boyfriend that I owed you 25 pounds, you were loony as usual. Then he was all like, OMG, sorry, I'm so embarrassed now. Then kept apologizing. I just laughed and said whatever. Sounds like he genuinely doesn't realize how wrecked he gets and how much of a nightmare he is. Am I the jerk for not reassuring my boyfriend I was fine after he didn't help me after my car broke down by his house? I was driving to the store and my car crapped out on me. Turns out the alternator failed and the engine stalled out. I pulled over to the side of a remote road. It was cold and I wasn't dressed for the weather without the car's heater. Dumb of me to not wear a warmer coat or think to put a blanket in my car for the winter just in case, but it was supposed to be a quick errand. I called my boyfriend who lived very close to where I was broken down and he didn't pick up. I texted him saying I was broken down and I needed a ride. Could he help? He said no, he had a friend visiting. I said it was freezing cold and I needed to get out of the cold fast because the car heater was broken too. He said, can't you ask a friend? This is a bad time. I called a friend who was 35 minutes away and he got on the road right away, and we made plans to have his brother, who works for a towing company, get it for cheap the next day as a favor. We hung out for a few hours and then I went to bed early. I accidentally left my phone in his car, so when he left, he took it along. The next morning, I couldn't find my phone and sent an email to my friend to ask if he had seen it. He replied and said he found it in his car and he could bring it back on the weekend. I thanked him and apologized for making him make the trip twice. Anyway, I worked through the day and only checked my social media after the workday. I saw some panicked messages from my boyfriend on my Facebook asking what had happened. I didn't answer his text for 24 hours after the last thing I sent was, "Can you please come pick me up? It's freezing cold and I need to get out of the cold fast. Car heater is broken." And I wasn't picking up my phone or answering texts or social media messages. Then he went out for a drive and found my car abandoned in the dirt off the side of the road. He was convinced I had been ignoring him to spite him for not leaving right away to get me. He hadn't realized how serious it was, and he had expected if I had had trouble getting a friend to help, I'd call him and tell him I didn't have another option. I said I wasn't being petty. I was just trying to deal with my own crap when my car crapped out on me, and I honestly wasn't thinking about him at all after he brushed me off for asking for help. He said that I was stupid for not thinking that he'd be worried to be ghosted for a day after saying I was in trouble. Am I the jerk for not telling my boyfriend I was okay after he didn't want to help me after my car crapped out? Entitled mother demands I give her my money. I should give a little backstory first. My parents had divorced when I was 10, I'm now 20, because my dad found out she was cheating when she told him my brother and sister, who were 7 and 8 at the time, weren't his. When asked for her reason to cheat, she said that she had found a man who was able to give her the high life, unlike my dad, a farmer trying his best to maintain a family while managing my grandfather's farm. When discussing custody over me in court, my mom said she wanted nothing to do with me and left my dad with full custody while she took my brother and sister with her and then married her side piece a month after everything was finalized. Of course, with the rise of social media, she only includes me in family photos to make herself look good, even though she tosses me to the side afterwards. I don't even have a relationship with my siblings because they look down on me for classist and petty reasons. Now, with that out of the way, on with the show. It was about 7:30 in the morning. I was feeding cattle and having a jam session when my dad came out to the feedlot to tell me someone was here to see me. I asked him who it was, but I didn't need him to answer me once I saw the angry look on his face as he throws a cigarette he had failed to light. I hop off the tractor and go walking around the farmyard until I spot a brand new Porsche with my mother sitting in the driver's seat. To describe what she looks like, imagine someone did a crappy job doing James Charles and Jeffree Star's heaviest makeup routine at the same time. A Karen haircut with only the blondest of highlights and a spray-on tan that would make Trump look pale. I often wonder if she'll ever do a face reveal just so the world could see the hunk of Swiss cheese under all of that. I walk up to her car and very politely say hello to her before she wrinkles her nose and looks at me in disgust. Entitled Mom, "Don't you have anything better to wear besides those filthy rags? And take that wad of chewing tobacco out of your mouth. Honestly, I'm embarrassed that you're my son looking like that." Me, these are work clothes, and I was working, and I just put this chew in. It ain't even kicked in yet. Besides, what do you want? She looks me up and down with a disgusted look again before taking a deep breath before speaking. "I need to ask a favor of you. In fact, it's rather important." The only thought going through my head was, she's part of a cult and needs me to be a sacrifice at tonight's meeting. Me, "Well, what is it?" Entitled Mom, "See, your sister is going to be graduating this year, and I think it would only be fair you gave her the money your grandfather left you, since you obviously don't need it." I know what she's after now. My grandpa had put aside $25,000 for each grandchild that once they turned 18, they can use for college, buying a car, whatever. The only catch was you needed to either graduate high school or obtain a GED. Now, why would she be wanting this money, you may ask? Well, I'll tell you. She had asked my grandpa after the divorce that not only should her kids, my brother and sister, still get the money, but also he needed to beef it up a few grand. My grandpa, out of spite, took the money originally meant for them and put it all in mine and told her only his actual grandkids get the money. A few years later, when he passed, my dad had added some of his inheritance into it, so when I graduated, I ended up with $93,000. I have since spent $27,000 out of it on a tractor and put the rest in savings where I add on to it every paycheck. Me, why would I give her any of my money? She doesn't even speak to me anymore. Entitled Mom, because it would be only fair since your grandpa denied her that money that she deserves, since she'll be attending college, unlike you. Plus, as her big brother, You need to be responsible. Me. That money was left to me for me to use on what I wish. Besides, if she wants it, she needs to ask me herself instead of telling you to do so. Entitled Mom. She doesn't need to ask you. In fact, I shouldn't be asking you either. But since your grandfather was a jerk, and you weren't caring enough to hand it over before, here I am. Me. Aren't you guys paying for her college? So why must I give her some too? Well, you see, I'm paying for tuition and housing, but she'll need some spending money as she shouldn't be working a low-level job to have money for fun. Me. Then give her spending money too. But I'll already be spending a lot, as college is expensive. Won't you do this for her? Me. No, I won't. And since when has something been too expensive for you? Just make your side piece work harder, like you did in the past when you wanted something big and flashy. How dare you speak to me like that? I'm your mother, and you should be thankful I gave birth to you. Even just a little bit will help. An idea came to mind. I falsely apologized to her and said she was right. I should give her something. I told her I'm going to run to my truck and grab the checkbook, and off I went. Once I was at my truck, I proceed to dig through the cup holders for pennies. Every little bit helps, right? Once I've gathered 20 or so pennies, I walk back and tell her to hold her hand out and drop the pennies in them with a smile. What's this? You said a little bit could help a lot, didn't you? So I thought you could have that. This isn't what I meant. A few thousand is more what I had in mind. She then throws the pennies at me and starts blaring the horn, screaming at the top of her lungs. I give her what she asked for. Honestly, where's a Pokeball when you need one? Because this one needs to be trained professionally on how to act. I'm just standing there watching her go on like this, and she's demanding money and calling me everything under the sun when she goes quiet, as I hear my dad yell out from somewhere, "Shut up, you jerk!" Taking this moment, I look back at her and say, "You never said thank you." Forget you, and you will give your sister what she deserves. Me. When you do a face reveal, I will. She told me to go forget myself and sped off, and that was the end of it. That's all for this episode, folks. Until next time, remember to pick up your popcorn containers and leave the theater in an orderly fashion. Am I the jerk for being upset that I'm not involved at my brother's wedding, which I am paying for? I, female 31, have a brother, male 29, and he's getting married next year. We lost our mom in 2012 and our dad in 2016. We are each other's only living relatives. I have a good job. I earn a lot of money, £150,000 per year. My brother also has a good job, but doesn't earn anywhere near as much, £35,000 per year. We were raised to always look after each other and share. My partner and I are child-free. Over the years, I've paid for my brother's master's degree, paid the down payment on his house. Our parents rented, so there is no family home. I will also be paying for my future sister-in-law, female 26, and my brother to have future rounds of IVF. Sister-in-law works part-time and earns about $15,000 a year. Her parents are not well off. My brother asked if I could contribute to the cost of the wedding. I said I'd pay for it, as long as it's small with 100 guests, and set up a wedding account for them, into which I put £25,000, which they both have access to. Sister-in-law's entire family are involved as bridesmaids and groomsmen. My husband and I are guests. Brother and sister-in-law have been going around venues with her family, and I get emailed the costing if it's selected. I told my brother I don't mind paying for the wedding, but I really feel weird that everyone else is involved in the decision, and I'm just involved with paying. Brother has said that I'm not our parents. I can't replace our parents, and that's why I'm not involved. Why can't I just do something nice without making him feel like crap? I feel like a jerk for causing drama, but also feel taken advantage of. Am I the jerk? Update. This is in the UK, in Northern Ireland to be exact. $35K is a good salary. I don't have student debt to pay off because I didn't go to uni. I was in the military before becoming a commercial pilot. My brother's salary will increase at his company. He needed a master's to progress beyond his current rung. Sister-in-law works part-time because she has a medical issue. She will never be able to work full-time because of this. Related. It is unclear if this is impacting fertility. In Northern Ireland, you get one round of IVF on the NHS, which they did. They paid for 2 more at $8,000 each. Sister-in-law family paid for another and stipulated they wouldn't be able to afford to pay for a wedding if that was the case. Brother and sister-in-law have been emotionally through the ringer with fertility issues. It isn't a cynical attempt to get money. For all of y'all talking about adoption, There is some serious BS about sister-in-law's illness, meaning they aren't attractive candidates. I am close with my brother, but do pay for things we do together. He has really been there for me emotionally, especially during some personal problems I experienced just before and after I left the military. Future sister-in-law was too. They didn't plan the engagement party. Sister-in-law's family did, and they didn't invite me because my husband and I are never available. We just have jobs that have us moving around a lot. Sister-in-law and brother were horrified. No one told them we hadn't been invited. They assumed we just didn't show up. But that was resolved, and we had a lovely meal together instead. My husband is supportive of our financial assistance. We are also helping his sister with her college costs, though why she had to go to the US when we have university educations that don't cost an arm and a leg right here is beyond me. Also, any of you who have paid your way through an American degree, I salute you. I still don't know what to do, but I do think maybe I'm not setting him up for success as I hoped, and also that I do deserve some recognition, even if it's just privately from him. We'll keep you updated. Not the jerk. You are not his parent, but let's face it, you have certainly financially supported him like one in so many different ways. And it doesn't sound like you are trying to control things, just want to be included the same as sister-in-law's family has been. Now that he's going to be a great big married adult, I think it's time you cut off your support and let him be the independent person he is. You're not the jerk. He wants to cut you out of even being involved, then he doesn't need your money. He has it right. You're not his parent, so stop acting like it. He's an adult, he can worry about his own finances. I don't think you should even pay for the wedding. If he's behaving like this now, he'll just cut you off and contact again when he needs help. So not worth of your effort and money. Not the jerk, obviously, but he is a major jerk. Having made a commitment to pay for the wedding, backing out would be a huge jerk move, especially as there was no discussion of what involvement OP would have. To impose retrospective conditions is not fair. However, going forwards, OP's sibling is not entitled to anything. I hope OP hasn't actually promised them anything concrete about the IVF. I disagree. It's just straight up disrespectful to take £25,000 from your sibling for your wedding and make them feel like crap for wanting just to be as involved as the other side of the family. That is a massive amount of money in Northern Ireland where OP is. The least the brother could do is be respectful in return. Well, what do you think? Should OP still pay for her brother's wedding or not? Please let us know. I'd still pay for it, as long as it's at the courthouse. Am I the jerk for giving my cousin $50,000 against my wife's wishes? Had a belated Christmas gathering last week with my extended family. The custom for this event is that we exchange stocking stuffers, nothing over $10. Ever since we've had this gathering, I've always bought scratch-off lottery tickets for all of the adults. As you would expect, they are almost always trash, but every year we have a few hit for extra ticket, $2, $5, even $10. One year, my uncle's ticket hit for $50 and everyone went crazy. It's always a good time. So this year, my 23-year-old cousin goes nuts. He holds his ticket up and claims that it just hit it for the max jackpot, $50,000. Everyone rushes over. A couple of my uncles verify. Yep, this kid just won $50,000. I was elated. I scooped him up in a big bear hug and said, "Merry Christmas, you lucky jerk." He was screaming and his mom was actually in tears and the whole room was excited. It was literally one of the top 10 experiences of my life. I feel my phone vibrate in my pocket and I pull it out to see my wife has sent me a text message that says, "Come out to the car." I go outside and can tell by her body language she's upset. She told me there's no way that we're giving my cousin $50,000, then starts fussing at me about buying the lotto tickets to begin with. Two things to explain. I'm not saying that $50,000 isn't a lot of money, it's a ton. But I'm in my mid-40s. I have a 2-decade professional career. My wife is a stay-at-home mom by choice. We drive later model cars that are paid for. Our retirements and the kids' college accounts are fully funded. Our only debt is the house. I'm saying this to show, while $50,000 would be nice to have, it's not life-changing money for us. My cousin, on the other hand, just graduated from college. His mom is single and was one of those fiercely independent women who refused charity. She took on extra jobs to help him pay for school. He worked at least 2 jobs himself while going to school full-time and still managed Dean's List, but he still had to take out loans. He landed a job, but he can't afford a car yet or to live close to the office, so he's looking at nearly a 2-hour commute. He's also saving for an engagement ring for his sweet girlfriend of 3 years. This money would literally change this kid's life, and frankly, I think it couldn't have gone to a better member of my family. I explained to her that we're not just giving him $50,000, we gave him a ticket I spent $5 on. She's not buying, and she won't let it go. She's now demanding I go back in there and take the ticket back from him, saying maybe we'll give him some of it. We argue a little bit. I can't get her to explain why she wants this money so bad, other than, "It's ours, and you're not giving it away." We fought all the way home, and she hasn't spoken more than a couple of words to me since. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your wife wouldn't want the ticket if it were worth $0 or even the $50 your uncle won, would she? She wouldn't demand you go back in there and do some takesy-backsies for $0. Your wife is completely in the wrong. You're right. You have not given away $50,000. You gave him a gift that could have been worth $0 at the end of the day for a bit of a laugh, and he got lucky. I would just not talk to her either and tell her I'm very disappointed in this poor show of character and hope she sleeps it off. Besides, legally, there were witnesses who saw you give the ticket to him as a gift and saw him scratch it and subsequently win. Morally and legally, it's his money, not yours or hers. That is a very good point. There's a room full of witnesses, probably someone even recording, because holiday gatherings, pictures, and recording happens, that can attest that the ticket was given as a gift. No question it was given to him, especially since it's a yearly tradition, and everyone knows OP gives that as a gift every year. Agreed. You have a history of giving lottery tickets. You have witnesses that have seen you give these lottery tickets and witnesses that your cousin scratched off the winner. She will not win any lawsuit because it was a gift of a ticket that could have been worth $0 or $50,000. Trying to take back the money and ticket will blow up the family for nothing. I agree that you should speak with your cousin and assure him that it belongs to him and say that if your wife contacts him to tell you and to ignore her. I also suggest that you tell your cousin that the money is 100% his. Many people get badgered into giving up part of it to try to make peace. I hope your wife calms down, but it is crazy that she thinks you guys would still have any rights to that ticket, and worse, that it isn't coming from a place of desperate need, facing homelessness, etc. A big congratulations to your cousin. It sounds like fate was very kind. Well, what do you think? Should OP do what his wife wants him to and demand that lottery ticket back from his cousin or not? Please let us know. Hope you never try to leave that wife of yours, buddy boy. She sounds like the kind of person that would really take you to the cleaners. Sure, I'll do my job. I'm a young person working in a backroom position at a retail store. I've been working there for about a year now. My management when I started was excellent, and as a result, I am very well trained. I never got written up, am always on time, and I consistently do things well above my pay grade. I fill in for my supervisor in the back room and can run it by myself if need be, and I trained our newest supervisor in her position. If you're wondering, I didn't take the supervisor job because it required changing my shift time. I knew all the fine details and was a team trainer as well. Basically, I was a supervisor, but without the pay raise. My managers moved on to greener pastures, and their positions were filled by new management. The new management doesn't compare to the quality of the old management. Our store manager, I'll call her Karen, is the worst manager I've had the displeasure of working for. She loves workplace politics, acting snaky, and micromanaging everything. When suggested solutions to problems, Karen would rather take a less effective route just to be the one in charge. When she messes up, instead of admitting it, Karen blames anyone but herself and makes it their responsibility to avoid looking dumb. Karen doesn't help when she's needed, rarely does her job, takes personal phone calls all day, and sits in her office on her computer. She's rude, inconsiderate, and incompetent. All in all, Karen is an awful boss. I tried to make peace with Karen at first, but we quickly started bumping heads and our relationship is shaky at best. We're cordial with each other, but Karen wanted me to abandon 100% of my authority while still running the back, which couldn't happen because others come to me for direction a lot. We don't speak to each other when we don't have to. Well, Karen messed up. One day in the back, we finished with a group activity. Simply put, I had to go to the bathroom. So once we were done, I told my supervisor I needed a quick bathroom break and headed out to the bathroom. The second I began my business, I got called on the intercom by Karen to come to the back room. I finished up quickly and got back to the stock room. I was gone about 2 to 5 minutes tops. When I walked in, Karen was immediately interrogating me on where I'd been and what I was doing. I told her I'd gone to the bathroom, and she continued asking, like the answer was going to be different. Eventually, Karen said this absolute gem to me, which she couldn't have known would change the course of our time at this company forever. Karen says, "You need to use company time more wisely and do your job." Okay. Remember how I said I was basically the backup stock supervisor at this institution? My list of self-appointed management duties was actually pretty long. Training new people, fixing damaged items, fixing packaging, training the supervisors, doing paperwork, delegating tasks, giving instructions to people, taking garbage out, cleaning the stock room. The list goes on and on. When Karen said this to me, something clicked. You see where this is going. I stopped all of it. All the managerial stuff went right out the window. Do my job? Okay, I'll do my job. Not your job, not her job, only mine. That's what you asked, right? Direct your own team, do your own paperwork, train your own supervisors, because I'm just a lowly wagey, right? Yep, my stockroom fell apart quickly. Suddenly, the entire room was in disarray. New people weren't being trained, faulty product was put out. My new supervisor had no idea what to do other than copy me, so none of the paperwork got done. Garbage stopped being taken. People in the stockroom didn't have direction, the floors were dirty, etc. I wonder why. It was a mess, and management couldn't say anything about it because those were management's duties and not my problem. I know that Karen knew what I did, but all she could do was silently fume about it, suck it up, and actually do her job. She got upset with me after this and tried giving me less shifts, but that didn't last. Management finally got involved with the stockroom. I've never been so satisfied with myself, all because Karen couldn't accept that I had to go to the bathroom. What are you gonna do? Fire me for doing my job? With all of the open positions right now, I'm always surprised when managers suck at keeping staff happy when they are internally motivated to do a good job. I'd like to make a poster that says, all you have to do is be a decent human being. Good for you. Am I the jerk for not replacing delivery driver's shoes? This just happened a few hours ago, and I'm still seething with anger. I ordered delivery pizza for dinner from a local place, a place my family orders from often. I got 2 pizzas for my family and waited for delivery. 25 minutes later, I went to greet the delivery driver at the door. I have 4 dogs that are free to go to the bathroom in the yard, so I have a sign that tells people to keep off the grass, especially considering it's been rainy and muddy the last few weeks. I would never have expected the delivery boy to walk through the grass. He did. Once he got to the door, he began complaining that he stepped in doggy doo and that his new shoes had been ruined. I looked at his shoes, and he indeed had doggy doo all over them. I shrugged and pointed to the sign that said to keep off the grass. I tried to hand him the cash and get the pizzas, but he refused. He told me I needed to pay for the shoes to be replaced as they were around $120. I laughed in his face. Thinking he must have been joking, I brushed it off and once again tried to get the pizzas. He didn't budge and told me that he was taking the pizzas back and would be back to get the money later. I was angry with what happened, but I made alternate dinner plans and let him leave. He pulled in again and demanded payment for the shoes, and I once again declined. My husband came to the door as well, on my side. I wasn't going to pay because the delivery driver was careless. While I continued to argue with the driver, my husband called the pizza place and put them on speakerphone. He asked to speak to whoever was in charge and was informed that it was the owner on the line. My husband let him know about the situation, but to our surprise, he sided with the delivery driver. "If you don't pay my son for his replacement shoes, your address will be deny listed from our restaurant." The owner clearly was angry as well. My husband ended the call, and we decided to just ignore them and not eat there anymore. The delivery driver was not going to leave after another hour and a half of arguing. I told him I would call the police if he didn't leave our front door. Now he's parked on the street, technically not our property, and sitting there. It's been another hour. Police can't remove him since it's not on our property, but I'm very uncomfortable. I told my family about the situation, and my brother-in-law told me I'm acting like a jerk. Am I the jerk for not paying? Edit. I haven't cleaned up the doggy doo due to the constant rain and it being extremely cold outside. I have a walkway that's very large and lit up. The sign is lit up as well. Not the jerk. You have a sign and he's an idiot. Besides, he could just wash them off. For goodness sake, these are shoes, not a Picasso. And if they are that precious, perhaps he shouldn't be wearing them to deliver pizza. He's a moron. I hope your alternate dinner was delicious. He shouldn't be wearing them when delivering, and certainly shouldn't be walking across a muddy yard. If you don't want your shoes to get dirty, you stay on the pavement. Reminds me of my coworker back at my high school job who wore a pair of brand new black jeans to work and then spilled bleach down the leg. Well, what do you think? Should OP pay for the delivery driver's new shoes or not? Please let us know. I'd be going to as many review sites as I could and telling the story of what happened here. Am I the jerk for telling my 13-year-old sister that she's the reason she doesn't have friends? Changed all the names due to privacy. Sounds bad, but let me explain. I, 19 female, have a sister, Nora, who's 13. First and foremost, I want to confirm that Nora is a smart kid. She's classified as being moderately gifted, bordering on highly gifted. However, Nora is incredibly arrogant and egotistical. She claims that other people are intellectually inferior, and that they are essentially too stupid for her to associate with. She would make similar comments about me until I got admitted to a selective university and began studying a smart major, accounting. This isn't just a problem with family members. The school constantly requests parent meetings because Nora will be rude to other students and refuse to socialize with them for class activities. Whenever they come back from the meetings, our parents will complain how the school doesn't understand Nora and is trying to drag her down with the average kids. They'll pretty much reassure Nora every time that she shouldn't have to hold herself back. I don't have any classes on Fridays, so my parents ask me to pick up Nora from school since they work and they don't want her taking the bus due to lockdown concerns. Before I even get out of the parking lot, Nora starts to complain about being stuck with this kid for a Spanish group project. They were meant to split into pairs and practice the new vocabulary by writing out a minute-long skit and acting it out for the class. The boy Nora got paired with, Ike, was dyslexic and had trouble reading the script. Nora had outright called Ike stupid and said how he was just making excuses and not trying hard enough. She kept ranting even when I would ask her politely to be quiet because I needed to focus on making certain turns. Nora complained how they had the option to pick a friend, but how her underqualified teacher had to put her with Ike because no one in her class is intelligent enough to keep up with her. I had gotten to a red light, so I turned around and told her something pretty close to, "Nora, you aren't friendless because everyone else is intellectually inferior. You're friendless because of your nasty attitude. You may think you're the smartest kid in the room, but you won't go anywhere in life until you learn to treat people with respect, much less make friends." Something I've wanted to tell Nora for a very long time. My sister was stunned and was completely silent for the rest of the car ride. After dinner, once my parents were home and Nora was in her room, my parents basically laid into me for what I told Nora. They said how I was basically bullying Nora and telling her how she should hold herself back when she's exceptional. I told my parents that I wouldn't say anything like that again, but I still feel what I said was necessary. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. 100% not the jerk. You gave your sister a reality check your parents should have. They're the true jerks in this story, raising a spoiled brat. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.